All right, we'd like to open the board meeting for the Ojai Unified School District, and if you could stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Great, thank you. This is every meeting is exciting for different reasons. This one we get to honor our retirees, but also some other individuals. We'd like to welcome Andy Cantwell, who is here at his first regular board meeting as our Assistant Superintendent for Finance. And usually we only have one student rep, but we are honored with both Zoe and Danielle. So it's great to have you here, as well as the rest of us regulars.
They make us look good.
That's right. That's right. So we'd like to start with approval of the agenda. Can we have a motion to approve?
I'll move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And there is an addition to the agenda, or is that already taken?
No, it's in there.
It's already in there.
6.4 is in there,
Great.
and is also in everybody else's agenda.
Terrific. So no additions or modifications. And the minutes from our last meeting, do we need to discuss, or can we have a motion to approve?
I'll motion to approve last meeting's minutes. As just stated.
Second. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
With one abstention. All right. And now our student representative report.
Hi, everybody. So we're from the high school. So this week on Friday, we're having our senior rally, and that's really exciting for a lot of reasons. We'll be hosting our incoming freshman class, so the current 8th graders. We're going to greet them at the buses and take them on a tour of campus, and then we're going to finish that tour in the gym where we will show them a video about the things happening at Nordoff that they get to get involved in next year. And then we explain to them the key run and the traditions at Nordoff. And then they sit in the freshman section because everyone kind of moves over and seniors sit on the floor. And then they get to enjoy our senior rally, which is exciting. And then we honor the accomplishments of our seniors, and we have a senior video. And then later, next week, we have senior lunch and graduation practice. And all seniors get to eat lunch and kind of hang out with the class, and then they go to the field for graduation practice. And senior grad night. First, we will meet in the parking lot at 8 p.m. To load buses for Mount Asia Family Fun Center in Santa Clarita. Students will be at Mount Asia until 2 a.m. enjoying video games, laser tag, batting cages, bumper boats, Indy cars, and miniature golf, as well as a dinner and ice cream. Seniors will return to the parking lot at Nordoff at approximately 3:30 a.m. the night before graduation. And then graduation will begin at 6:30 on Thursday, June 11th.
Fantastic. So at this point in our agenda, we want to take time to honor these great student reps. We have had many student representatives over the years, and they've all been wonderful to have here, but the two of you are just exceptional. And not only do you bring great information, but you bring it with excitement, enthusiasm, and just a great personality. So this would be difficult if one of you was really great and the other was terrible. That would be really awkward, right?
Yes.
But you're both terrific. And this is the part where I'll come over and congratulate you. And this is the part where we would normally hand you a plaque recognizing how wonderful you are, but it's not quite ready. So we're going to have to do that later. But thank you so much for being here and being part of it. All right, it's time.
What is that? This is an unusually large audience, correct? You don't normally see this, but I'm still going to put you on the spot because in addition to agreeing with Thane about the quality of your reports, I'd like you to tell the group and the TV audience about what you did before you became our representative, as in the senior mentoring program. Could you just describe this thing that you thought of, which is now, I hope, going to be a long-time part of Nordoff?
Okay, so Zoe and I, originally Zoe's idea, we formed a senior sibling program, that's what we called it. And it was a program that involved the incoming freshmen and the seniors. There was a senior paired with 2 to 4 freshmen, and it was just focused on having Nordoff be a more comfortable place for the freshmen, and the senior kind of act as their mentor. So they kind of like led them around school and showed them their classes. And I don't know, I liked it. It was really fun. We had some mini rallies, we had some competitions. Yeah. It was just kind of like a community building sort of thing. We hosted events throughout the year that were bonding events, and it was super fun. And we're so excited to hear that Nordoff is interested in doing it for years to come. So yeah.
Very good.
Perfect. Thank you. All right, moving to item 5, public comments. We have 2 speaker forms that I've received. If just going to get myself in trouble, but if anybody else wants to speak, feel free to fill out a form and hand it in.
Do they want to speak now or during the number that the...
I don't think any of these are on the agenda.
No, they're not. Yeah, this is on.
That's for later.
So we'll start with Merv. Welcome.
Thank you very much for having me. I am a newly elected Vice President of the OI Federation of Teachers, currently in charge of leading negotiating. We've got plenty of representatives from OFT here, from the Executive Board and our bargaining unit. And I just wanted to kind of inform the board of OFT's priorities as we move forward and continue on. With all the news of teachers successfully bargaining contracts locally, regionally, and statewide, Ohio Unified teachers are really excited to hear some good news coming out of the negotiations. Negotiations are progressing, but Ohio Unified is losing ground compared to other districts, hindering our ability to lure the next generation of teachers to our district. OFT members have accepted a total number of 40 furlough days since the year 2008-2009, roughly saving the district about $3 million in order for the district to weather this financial crisis. The district plan, currently it looks like the district is planning to restore furlough days and that teachers have endured since the 2008-2009 school year, but that only gets us back to ground zero. Now as the economy is recovering, Governor Brown's newly revealed budget looks like it could be the best year for educational funding in decades. The repayment of funds owed to districts and the closure of this funding gap for the LCFF, the locally controlled funding formula, will see a big increase in revenues for Ohio Unified School District. OI currently ranks the last out of 19 districts in the county. We are ranked 19th in terms of teacher pay. Teachers have taken furlough days, continued taking furlough days since the revenues of the district have started increasing in the last 3 years. The U.S. inflation rate has been 13.4% over the last since 2008 to 2014, and cumulatively, Ohio Unified faculty salary has received no cost of living allowance during those years. That's my comment. Is that blinking? Okay. So, thank you very much.
That's good. Thank you.
Here, here.
Great, and then Craig Andrews.
Good evening. Good to see you all. I just threw my hat in the ring to speak to you for a couple of minutes, just to support our negotiators and what Merv just said to you on the governing board. And I want to reassure you all that our negotiators have the full support of our faculty. And a substantive raise for faculty and all workers in the district is past due. And if this isn't the year to make for a substantive raise, then what is? So we're going to be watching closely to see what your intentions are. For us, a substantive raise would be something well in excess of the inflation rate. Otherwise, we're not repairing any of the damage done to make us whole. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. And let's see, Angie, we're waiting. You want to comment on the budget at that time, or would you prefer to
I
do
don't
it
mind
now?
comment, either one.
It's up to you.
Can I turn on, I didn't turn on my thing first.
Sure.
Go ahead, Wendy, my heart's beating.
All right. You're up next.
Mine as well, and I just wanted to kind of approach you guys with a little bit of history. I'm a product of Ojai, Perfect School District since kindergarten. Went through Marimani, and I can remember all of my principals. And of the many things I learned educationally, I also learned that all good relationships are built on trust. And I trust our administration, and I trust you guys to try to work out something that you feel is fair for both sides.
Thank you. We'll wait because we'll want some good input when we get to that item. So,
You got it.
Great.
I'll be here.
Terrific. I know you will be. All right. Thank you so much for the comments. We appreciate it and for your attendance. We're moving to item 6.1, the recognition of retirees. Those who have served here in the district, and we really appreciate the work done.
I just interrupting for a second, I'm sorry. So we covered. Just see Jackie, it's just hard to see her, but Jackie here? Jackie left? Jackie? Oh, no. Jackie. Okay, up here. Okay, great.
So some of the individuals, I'll just
Yeah, that's why I know she was there.
the kind of color commentary is some were honored at the meeting just previous to this meeting, and so we can mention the names, but they already had a speech and they may have left because we heard so many good things about them. There wasn't anything more to say.
I'll tell you, I knew it was here. Okay, so here. So here's here.
Should we do it by principal?
Yeah, no, just do it by, here, let's hold that. And just go just down the list. We did Kathy Allstott at 4. Jackie wasn't here, and Greg could do Heather.
Great. So, Dr. Bayless, do you want to come up and introduce Heather Farley?
I would be thrilled to. Heather, come on up. Since we're first here, how do you want the logistics here? Do you want her facing? Is this good?
That's a good place to face, right there. That would be the camera.
Heather, we are very sad but very happy for you saying goodbye to Heather Farley, our graphic arts, digital photography, media arts captain. Heather is somebody who I have really appreciated both on a professional level and personal level. And of course, you guys all know there's a difference sometimes. Heather is always just barely away from a smile or a chuckle. Even when she's mad, she's probably smiling. That's something I think every one of us know and really love about her, and that's what her students love about her. She holds students accountable, challenges them through the lever of love and compassion, and students respond to that really well. So again, in speaking earlier about Greg Lapine and sort of the ethos of the school, key person with all of that, and so we are sad to see you go, but we're grateful you've been there long enough to hopefully have passed that on to the next generation of people, how to love kids at the same time teaching them. She is somebody who really understands that the best kind of education happens when students are doing real work for real audiences. So it's Heather and her students that have put together all of our brochures. They put together countless brochures and posters for the community, tennis tournament, that sort of thing. Kids are learning real professional skills. I've gone in there with projects and said, here's what I need. I have this project. She'll connect me with a student. The student will come up with 3 or 4 design scenarios. I'll talk to the student. I'll say, I want this change, that sort of thing changed. She's really coaching them on how to be graphic designers, but more so how to be professional, how to be creative and offer up, be creative within some parameters that are set by the client, those sorts of things. She really does have that workshop attitude where she's very committed to the students do the work. So I'll come to her sometimes, I'll say, hey, can we get this done? And maybe in my mind I sort of thought that she was going to do it, but she always makes sure the students do it, and I really appreciate that about you, because that is good teaching. That is good teaching. She really embodies that. She is really, really selfless. I've come to you countless times over the years and asked you to do a quick project, quick turnaround, and you always, I think, move things around for your students and get them working on something. So I really appreciate that. I know that the timing hasn't always been the most convenient. She is transitioning to, she is a horse lover, and she's transitioning to a beautiful Victorian house in Chico area. And so she's going to have a fantastic, maybe I'll stop by on the 99 and see you, but again, she has just the most winsome personality and smile and heartfelt chuckle. I really am going to miss you. Miss you. So, congratulations.
Great. And Judy Weissman.
Yes, Judy Weissman. Come on up. Here's the camera. So, during the challenging, I guess we'll call them pink slip years, when there was a lot of shuffling and people being moved around, Nordhoff really was, in many ways, the beneficiaries of a lot of that movement. For example, Greg Lapino I spoke about earlier. Judy came to us as a result of that, and we got really lucky. We got really lucky because we've had some misses, some issues in our F8 computer lab where Judy worked, and it's a really important place because we have classes moving in and out, and if it's not done right, computers don't work for the next group of students and teacher, and the whole game plan that the teacher has doesn't work. So keeping things really neat and orderly and operational is no small task because it gets used a ton. And Judy just knocked it out of the park on that. I mean, she rivals Marilyn Smith in terms of cleanliness. I know it's a high praise. Cleanliness and orderliness. And I've got a little Marilyn Smith in me as well, so I just really appreciate it because I'm kind of a neat freak. And so Judy did a great job, and she did something that you don't hear too often, and I think you hear it more in this district than anywhere else. But it's something that a mentor of mine told me that you always want to look for when you hire people, and that is that somebody going to do a great job with what they're given, or is it somebody going to look for what needs to get done in addition? So after about a month in the job, she got a hold of somebody, I don't know if it was Dan Music at the time or if it was me, said, I've got little spaces in my job where there's maybe not a class coming down. Give me some projects. What can I do? What needs to be done? And I know that Layla at that time was really overwhelmed with some things like the newsletter. So there was this great compromise reached when she took over the newsletter, and that's a really important piece of our communication with parents. She orchestrated that. That's no small task because you have to get all the various writers to turn in work on time. And teachers make the worst students, so they don't always turn their work in on time. And so she did a great job with that. And that's really, again, when I think about Nordhoff, the ethos of the school, great relationships with students and just people looking what needs to get done and filling the gaps. And she really epitomizes that. So we've really missed you. It's wonderful to see you again. And maybe now that that great arrangement that you and your husband had about not working, that you broke that, you can maybe think about coming back.
why don't we have Catherine White come up? Because I think you have 6 people to talk about. So I'll let you organize
Okay,
that.
I will do that. Okay, so where to start?
I wouldn't, that's no reflection on you.
Okay, so here we go. So out of 41 contracted employees, we have 13 staff members leaving next year for various reasons. Yeah, it's going to be huge. So this includes 5 full-time teachers retiring and 1 full-time classified employee. If you add Kat Layton's mid-year retirement in December, that makes a total of 7 retirees for us. So instead of speaking about each one of them individually, I'm going to speak about those listed on your agenda as a group. So part of the reason for that is that they are shy and a bit uncomfortable about being the focus of attention.
Will they come up here though?
They will eventually. I'm not going to make them do it yet. Hang on. So I can give you a good example about just how uncomfortable they are about this recent attention, this extra attention they're getting about retirement. And that is the number of teachers and staff accepting the retirement incentive and classified people retiring. Those of us remaining were having a really hard time deciding how are we going to honor all these people. And it's an amazing group of people too. So shortly before the final number came in, we came up with this idea that we were going to go rent the Grange Hall right across the street from the school. We're going to have a big barbecue for hundreds of people. And we knew everybody was going to want to come. And we were going to hire a band. We were going to celebrate late into the night. And as this word got out that this was being discussed, I had a teacher come tell me that this was making some of them really uncomfortable. So they did not want all this attention drawn to their retirement. In fact, they held a meeting to talk about what their retirement party should look like. And the outcome was a very small gathering this Friday night with only the people they work with in attendance. So they went from my grand to a very small gathering, which is going to be wonderful. And it's not, so when I speak about them, it's not the degree of the credentials they hold or trainings that they've had or the 121 years of combined experience they have collectively in our district that I want to recognize. Those are significant. And I want to recognize the way they've made differences in the lives of the Miramonte families. They've been kind to our students. They've made them feel welcomed, cared for, and loved. They've had compassion. They've shown the students that they are concerned about them. They've modeled this characteristic for the students, and as a result, the students will be more open to understanding the world around them. They've been empathetic. They've put themselves in the students' shoes, and they've seen things from their perspective. This has impacted their decisions and actions as they've worked with our students to meet their needs. They've worked to be positive. This is not always easy. Being positive is even harder when many of the problems have been met with limited solutions, like what we've faced as a district in our recent years with budget reductions. I know it's taken a toll on them, and they've worked hard to not allow that to impact the students. They've been builders. They've bridged gaps and relationships, friendships, and community. They've worked to make things better inside and outside of our school. They've inspired. Good students want to be better because of them. They've uncovered treasures, possibilities, and made magic. So Kat Layton, she's not here right now. She was 17 years as our office manager. We had a nice party for her mid-year. Jackie Law is here now. Jackie, I will introduce you. Jackie Law. Jackie O'Brien. Jackie O'Brien, stand up and introduce your husband to everybody. Hello, O'Brien. Hello, O'Brien. Jackie is an instructional aide in special education, and she is sitting right next to her friend and colleague and special day class teacher, Chris Peterson. We also have retiring from our school this year, Sharon Michael. She's not here, 25 years. Houston, who some of you heard me speak about earlier, 29 years. And Camille Houston with 22 years. Thank you very much. So, would either one of you like to stand up and say anything? Oh, Chris is thinking about it. Here we go.
Well, I can't think of a better group of people to teach with than the people I have worked with, than the people I've worked with in Miramonte. From the moment I came, they were supportive and helpful and took me in and said, "You're one of us now," and that was just a lovely experience. And as you said, as we all know, it hasn't always been easy, but I have enjoyed my time there immensely.
I'd like to introduce your newly retired husband.
Semi-retired.
Oh,
My husband
semi.
Douglas.
Hello. Surprised me is when you said some indication that she would be shy, retirement like that kind of a person. That's not Chris.
Well, they didn't want it for this. Jackie, did you want to say something? Jackie O'Brien?
Oh, well, I really enjoyed working with the special needs children at our school and just the other people in our classroom. There's been a lot of people that have been there for a while, so it's felt like a community to me, and I've just really been blessed, yeah. So thank you, Deb.
Well, great, thank you and thank you. Josh, would you like to come up and talk about Larry Thorpe?
Yeah, I don't think Larry's here, but I definitely want to talk about Larry. Yeah, so Larry had 9 years of service with Ohio Unified, all of those in the skilled maintenance worker position. I actually had the pleasure of serving 2 of those years with Larry, but a great guy. He's going to be greatly missed. In our limited staff, he was one of 4 core boots on the ground, gloves on the ground, kind of guy that we use day in and day out here throughout the district. And Larry was always one of those guys that could think out of the box, very resourceful, come up with a solution for us. And usually during that emergency situation where you really need that alternate solution. So I appreciate Larry and all that he did for us. Many thank yous to him day in and day out. And doing the dirty part of the work most of those days, sometimes behind the scenes without any recognition. Glad to have the opportunity to say thank you publicly for Larry Thorpe and his service to OUSD.
Cheryl, were you planning on talking about Tim exactly?
We did. So Tim Austin is an instructional aide at Topa Topa, and I tried to do a little bit of history checks. As most of you know, I've only been there for 1 year, so I haven't known Tim that long. But he's worked on several different sites and landed at Topa Topa County about 5 years ago. He has a great reputation among the students. Even though he only works with 1 student particularly, all of the students on campus know him. He's known to have a great sense of humor, to wear Hawaiian shirts regularly. And I just learned today that one of his things is that every Tuesday he wears a different, unique, kind of funny tie to kind of keep the kids on their toes with his tie collection. So he will be missed at Topa Topa and in Ohio Unified School District. We really appreciate all the work that he has done. Especially, I know that he is much loved by his student currently and the family that he's been working with. So, Tim Austin.
And Don will talk about Craig Smith.
Oh, you made it! Oh, God. I haven't seen Craig since February. Good. Craig has worked for the Ohio Unified School District for 15 years.
And he retired from Miners Oaks, as I said, this January, and he was our lead custodian. Well, for 15 years, Craig has brought a lot of laughter to Miners Oaks School. For 15 years, he's been known as the Cookie Monster by the students.
Hey, that wasn't planned. I just walked up to a kid eating a cookie one day and I go, you love cookie. That was it. I was on the Cookie Monster. You know what's really fun is I'm walking out of the post office or the store or something and all of a sudden this car passes, little head sticking out of the car. Cookie Monster!
That's why you're wearing blue, too. And then for 15 years, he shared his puppetry, songs, and guitar skills with our school. And for 15 years, Craig took very few days off from work. After working that many years, he probably decided it's time to rest. So he deserves every nap and restful moment that he can get. And we've missed his cheerfulness and his stories and his happy demeanor, but I'm sure he's definitely enjoying his retirement.
Yeah.
We have a play coming up at Miners Oaks, and I understand you have a part in it. Is that true? What is your character?
Which is the winner?
So he's coming back for a cameo and whatever. So Craig got his retirement.
And Suzanne will talk about Denise Hawkins.
And Denise, did she make it? Don't see her. You know, I had the opportunity to share stories about Denise in several venues, and so I don't know if you've heard before, she was our cafeteria manager at Nordoff. But prior to being just the cafeteria manager, she also led the department. She was the director of nutrition services. And it was a very interesting adventure for me to come in and have Denise step back and have me take over that position. And you know, I have to tell you, she was so graceful and respectful. And I so appreciated that in her. She chose to make that move on her own. And it was the right move for her, because as you saw her at school and working, she was in the right place. And I don't know, for those of you who do work at Nordoff, she had a great connection. She was able to work with the students in a respectful way. She made them smile, she made them laugh. She was part of their lives outside when you'd see her at football games, and definitely part of the community. In some of the speeches that I've done before, I've talked about, you know, the number of dinner rolls that she's made and the number of pints of milk she gave out, the number of eyes that she looked at. And, you know, the numbers are staggering. So anyway, I do miss her. She left in October. She did a great job training her replacement, Sonia. Sonia has taken the role very seriously and has done a great job. And I totally respect Denise for all the work she's done. So when you see her, you let her know that she's sorely missed, okay?
I'd like to invite up Phil Paddock to talk about Carol Paddock.
Okay, very high.
We're all a big family.
Yeah, I met Carol at Nordoff. So here's Carol's story. She was that girl in high school who was confident and optimistic and fearless, and when the girls started to get their driver's licenses, Carol was the one who would drive the station wagon. She was the one elected to be the spokesperson to speak to the adults. She was the senior class president who was asked at the graduation ceremony in 1969 to not address the war, but of course Carol, being bold and fearless, addressed the war. And so Carol knew that she always wanted to be a teacher. She went to Cal State LA. She majored in history, studied India and Southeast Asia. And after that, she got a master's in English language development. That became her specialty. She taught at Alhambra High School, and then Santa Barbara and Santa Paula. And Nordoff didn't have an ELD person in the late 80s. They heard about someone who was really dynamic at conferences presenting, and that was Carol, and they hired her. And she started at Nordoff in 1989. And first principal, I believe it was, referred to Carol as a diamond in the rough. She's, just...
You remember all this?
Yeah. So just a powerhouse of ideas and a strong, confident teacher who could take a group of students and really allow them to get deeply into something. Her simulations in history classes are well remembered by her students because she had that fearlessness and confidence as a teacher to really allow them to dig in and to let it go, perhaps a little further sometimes than you wanted to. Okay. And, but her English language development students benefited hugely from Carol's guidance. So many success stories there. She really developed that program at Nordhoff. They had bailes for those students to feel welcome at the school. They had all kinds of exchanges, and she really was great at building community. I had the pleasure of teaching with her in a combined English history program for juniors called American Experience. And again, memorable times there, fantastic. And so Carol also started the peer mediation program with several others, Kim Hoy's here, Denise Thomas, and again, touched students in so many ways, offering them a path to careers in the legal profession and so on. Some of them did go on as professional mediators and so on. Our mayor.
And Javier.
Right, and then Carol moved over to Chaparral High School about 7 years ago. And again, she, full of ideas, she initiated a lot of programs, Student Senate to give students voice. And she really, I think, prospered there in restoring student confidence. Students may have been a little shaken in their confidence, and she's so good at giving confidence to students. So she's a fantastic ceramic artist, and she's going to move into a lot of time with her art as she retires. So well deserved.
Congratulations.
How to speak English. I didn't know how to speak English. I had it for too many years. But you taught me how to speak the language. It's something that I'll never forget. Thank you for everything you've done. I'll never forget this. I just really make this very quick. She showed me a card of a potato. She said, "What does it say?" And I say, "Potatoe." That's the way I pronounce it here. It's potato. No, it's potatoe. Thank you.
On the list, I just gotta say that Carol, really important to me when I came to Nordhoff 20 years ago, and my wife coming to Nordhoff as well. Both you and Phil, incredibly important in terms of mentoring us and bringing us into the profession and helping me be, both my wife and I, good teachers. I really appreciate it. Very much.
And Dr. Bangser will talk about Sandy McElwain, who couldn't make it.
I will. Before I start, though, I think, Javier, I think that's how Dan Quayle pronounced that, too.
We know that's how it's spelled.
I know. It's a better story. Anyway, and we should point out that the presenter for Carol Paddock will be her successor. Phil, congratulations. You'll be taking Carol's spot in the English program at Chaparral High School. I welcome you as the titular principal. That's really all I'll say about that role. And Becky welcomes you as Dean of Students, and of course the whole staff there. Looking forward to having you come. And Greg and his staff are still crying over their loss. Sandy McElwain worked with us for 9 years. Her last day was, in fact, April 1st. That was her last day here. She was a really very, very fine director of technology and formed the program. Before that, it was a contractually based outsourced program. And so what we now know to be our in-house technology department is in large part due to Sandy's creativity and management skills. what she accomplished, along with her great, large, broad staff of 2, that would be 3 for the entire district, is remarkable, and it's still really only 3. And I think one of the great legacies of any fine leader is the people whom that person leaves behind to succeed. Just talked about Carol and Phil. I'm not sure that was precisely how that all happened, but we have Sandy in great part to thank for David. And anybody who knows David Rogers knows that he has flourished under not only Sandy's leadership, but friendship. And so I know, I'm looking at Suzanne, I'm sure she has way more stories than I could ever know about Sandy, because the 3 of our directors work together and live together on nutrition services, maintenance operations, and transportation and technology. But I think the thing I love most about Sandy would be the combination of her laugh and her sense of humor. And if you're in technology, you better have a sense of humor. Because she and I noted that our jobs were somewhat similar, but hers I thought was much more difficult, because whatever she thought that day was going to be like, it wasn't like that at all. You just know that Murphy's Law applies to technology if it applies to anything, and if it can go wrong, it will, and it usually does. But she really led us through the iteration of technology we now have, and that David has now inherited, and I know will take to the next level. So I hope she'll get a chance to see the television broadcast of what I had to say about her, and we miss you, but we thank you for David. Javier, go ahead.
Yeah, so now that you speak English.
Mr. Marzal.
Kind of. I do math. Math really well. I don't know.
We'd like to invite you and Yolanda Flores to talk about the COPA.
I'm going to give a little background.
Oh, Maryland. Okay, great.
Just background.
The more the better.
Yeah.
The more the merrier.
The more the merrier. One of the requirements of No Child Left Behind is to establish a district English Learner Advisory Committee, a DLAC. And in order to comply with both those federal guidelines of NCLB and the state local control funding formula, LCFF, we have retained our DLAC, but we've renamed it Community of Orientation Pro
Academics. Yeah.
Okay. So this parent advisory group is comprised of not only parents of our English learners, but all Spanish-speaking parents. So it's really a much broader base, much broader committee than just the DLAC. The group meets monthly to listen to presentations, participate in training, discuss English learner needs, offer input, develop plans and goals for educational programs and services. So Javier will give a little background about COPA and then introduce them.
Thank you. I'm actually going to pass out this calendar that I provided right here, and it's basically what we have done in the last 3 years. So this kind of started like an experiment. Well, 4 years ago, I went to one of the DLAC meetings in Sonora, and I found myself surrounded by very passionate parents. We said, you know what, we like to meet, but we only meet 3 times a year because that's the sort of like the DLAC requirement. Right, Marilyn, am I right on that? 3 times a year, twice a year? Yeah. Okay. So they said, how come we don't meet more often? And I found my calling. I said, well, I'll tell you guys what, this is 4 years ago. I said, will you guys be interested if I started something next year where we will meet once a month? It will be like I just picked the first Monday of every month. And we will have a topic of discussion. I don't know what the topic is going to be, but we'll have something to talk about, okay? Because the parents like, well, right? So, I meant that in a good way, by the way. Okay, I meant that in a good way. So 4 years ago, so 3 years ago, before school, actually the first week of school, I did a connected message to the families, the parents of the Spanish-speaking students to see if they wanted to meet and create this group. So we met, and the idea at that time was, okay, so we're going to create this group. What's the purpose of this group? What's the goal? Okay, what are we going to accomplish? And I was very moved. I was very surprised by the need that they felt. We would like to have meetings where we discuss it was a range of ideas that they brought to the table. I mean, and as you guys can see here, over the last 3 years, what we have talked about, it was going from mental health to talking about eating disorders, talking about just different kinds of workshops. So I found that, you know, the need was there. So we did it as an experiment. I said, okay, let's go ahead and try it. So we had our first meeting, and the turnout was great. At that point, what I was doing was I was in charge. So I would get the input from the parents at the beginning of the year, and then I was in charge of researching people who were professionals in that field, who would speak speak Spanish, and who would be willing to volunteer their time to do a little workshop for our families. So the first year was a little bit of a struggle for me because it was hard for me to find the time. It was really hard for me to find the time. Okay. Luckily, I found myself a very, very passionate parent. Yolanda, who I'd like to point out, Yolanda, can you please stand up, because she really deserves a hand. I'm going to give He's taking over the program of COPA, okay? And I want to point out to Mr. Narciso, puedes repasar, y Mrs. Rosa, por favor. Okay, these are actual very passionate parents who are always at the meetings. They're always, you know, giving me their input of things that we should do. They're very, very passionate about their kids' education. Thank you. First year, 3 years ago, we had a full calendar. We accomplished it. It went really well. The following year, we just kept on moving. And the following, actually, we didn't have a name the first 2 years, so I struggled with that a little bit too. I said, what are we going to name this group? What are we going to name this group? So ideas bounced back and forth between the parents, and we decided to call it Comunidad de Orientación Pro Académica, which is basically what we have here, acronyms is COPA. Has nothing to do with cups or drinking, by the way. Okay, but you know what I mean. So we wanted to have a name that was short and to the point, and it would be catchy. And we've been sticking with it for the last 3 years. It's been a success. So we're planning on moving forward with this for the following year and the years to come. And like I said, it's been really good. It's been taken very well by the community. Sometimes we have presenters who don't speak Spanish, but I'll do the translation. So we always work it out. So it's been very lucky with that. Okay, so every first Monday of the month, 7 o'clock until you guys are more than welcome. Anyone's welcome. Okay. I think that's it. You guys have any questions?
I have a question. Does it require funding?
No. Everything is volunteer.
Yeah, everything's volunteer. Yolanda and myself we're in charge of calling the people who you see on this list to volunteer the time. Say, will you be willing to do this for us? I'll take you to dinner or something. We'll make it work. So far, so good. I mean, sure, it'd be nice to have some funding for some of the things that we have talked about. We talked about maybe having like a university trip with the family, with the parents. You know, Casa Chanolitas. So that's something that Yolanda and I are working on for next year. So those are ideas, again, that have been developed in this group.
Sounds totally worthy.
Yeah.
Fabulous.
So.
Congratulations.
Well, thank you. That's it.
Thank you.
All right, thanks.
Es tan importante incluir los padres en apoyando a los estudiantes. Muchísimas gracias.
Very nice, thank you.
All right. Now, more recognizing, we have so many great people. It's just, well, we could spend forever, but I'm really excited to recognize 2 of our outstanding volunteers in the district. Today, I recognized several of them last month, but one of our own, Linda Taylor. And so...
Becky, would you come up, please? Becky, I noted earlier, is the person who really manages Chaparral High School. I just had a chance to work with her a little bit. Becky's the Dean of Students, and the staff made a great choice, we think, in honoring Linda Taylor.
So the reason Linda couldn't be honored at the meeting last month is because she was volunteering to be on a trip on the Channel Islands with Franklin Hines Environmental Field Studies class for an entire week. So she couldn't be here to be honored last month because she was volunteering even more. Linda has taught art to Chaparral students for quite a while, and students look forward to that class, and we always have a waiting list. There are always more students who want to take it than there's room in the room for. She makes do with very few resources, many of them her own resources, most of them her own resources. And she is so kind to the students and so encouraging to them, and she really helps to draw out their creativity from students who often started out class because they needed fine arts credits, and they didn't really think of themselves as being artists or being artistic or being creative, and she helps them to find that in themselves, and that's really special, and we really appreciate that she does that. She has also, in my time working at Nordhoff, we saw her on campus all the time. So as a school board member, she's visible everywhere, but also just as a community member and a volunteer. She's been involved with the Interact Club at Nordhoff for many, many years. And just whatever teachers or students need, she finds a way to help out. And we really appreciate all that she has done for us and our students. Thank you so much.
And we'd also like to recognize Nikki Sage. Don?
You talked about this? You're going to do that at the school?
Yeah, I was going to present to her at school because she's in Hawaii.
Well, just tell us a little bit about it. Just tell us about it.
Okay, well, Nikki Sage is a volunteer extraordinaire. She does our book fair twice a year, anything PTA, anything fundraising, Nikki is just there. Plus, the poor thing lives so close to school, we call her like she's an employee. Come, Nikki, can you help us with this? And no, she always comes over. She's got one daughter at our school. And so we're going to present to her when she's back from her Hawaiian vacation, probably looking nice and tan, and we'll give her her plaque when she's back. So, it's Nikki Sage.
If you can't be in Ojai, Hawaii's okay, I guess. All right, terrific. We still have a little bit of food, and this might be a time when a few people want to leave. So why don't we break for a short reception, about 5 minutes, and then after that we'll move on with our program.
Yeah, hold your name right there. Not upside down.
Wait.
Detail oriented. Love and hat. Working it. Yeah, you're spitting that. Yeah, I'm sorry.
I've got the 600 shots.
here. And now put it in old school.
I'll post it on our Facebook page. In case you are. Oh, wait, this is that's right. Here we go, big smile. 1, 2, 3. Cute. Keep smiling. Awesome.
Nice job. One share over here. Well, there's a little prize coming.
It's an updated budget.
What you got? First annual, first ever. Another new tradition that we started.
Whatever stops us twisting. It's already set. Thank you.
Anything else that you need?
Well, she said that
Why are we all so mean?
Right.
I knew I wasn't asking.
We're in trouble now. We're coming before the board.
I think my wife is
That's okay.
because
are you here?
she's like, we gotta be getting our car in the garage for the biggest accomplishment we do. And we actually over the weekend unlocked it from the malls and there's exactly. Yeah. Well, the nice thing is we fortunately have a play hammer because anything I do, and so when I'm hammering, it's like put the hammer down, he wants to grab my hammer and start hitting the walls. And so unfortunately we're able to control that with this softer hammer, but there was a few times when we thought we had big.
Okay, so the new agenda that includes this next item, 6.4. You might have read, so
Nice.
we can start.
I have my agenda with my notes.
Okay. Or this could replace your next pages.
Oh, okay, great.
There's 63, which you get rid of those, and then these if you want.
Like it's been we're in the San Francisco area, living out there for months of the year. The other time I saw we were up there, it's amazing for more part. So we were really from so we actually decided to go back to what it would be like the Living Christian that we've done.
Right, yeah, see there's the new one, there's that one. And that's a sheet, single sheet.
Instead of driving to the cottage, which would be a waste of money, it's all, again, and someone's trying to our son. Of course, it's to drive to one of our houses, drop off our son, and just start the day. Exactly, they get exactly. So, yeah, that's the plan. So, yeah, Sure.
I think now we're ambassadors.
To get the home, we are probably 2 years away. Because also, my wife doesn't want to take home. I think some Tony stuff is really weird, but, so, I'm wearing a turbine. I'm still here, but I'm still away from
I'm good. No one knows my story.
So we have
You know what, I don't have a long time ago. There's a woman I work with now.
What's up, Cantwell? Bringing it? Are you doing any kind of report? No. Oh, man. One freebie. Oh, is this my,
All right, 2-minute warning.
It's a small 5'9".
We'll get started as soon as,
There you go. This is a benefit of that JD.
We can the same thing as M3.
Your color?
Oh, sorry?
It's just there, you know, in Chicago, I'm sure it's credit. So,
It's just a matter of that.
and of course, I always have a ritual I like to walk to work. That's why I stay at a hotel maybe 10 minutes away. No, it's Dirksen.
Oh, the Dirksen.
Right there off the and so, of course, I start walking. Not too bad, buggy-wise, but it's a little, you know, I've got my briefcase, I've got my overnight bag. It just starts raining. And then I'm like, I wait in the Starbucks, and then it's still raining, and finally I rush. Friday.
I'm so sorry I haven't
No.
responded yet.
Why? Oh, don't. Really? No, don't be sorry.
But
Yes,
Thursday,
Thursday,
okay.
much worse.
We have a few things to touch base on tomorrow, so if you're okay with Thursday, do you want to do 8 a.m.?
I know.
I walk out the door, sun. And then for the rest of the walk, all sun, and then I get a cab immediately, and I get in a cab and go home, and I'm like, this is a stupid thing.
I'm available till 11, so why don't you just email me tonight, or it's out, but anytime between 7 and 11.
All right, we'll bring the meeting back to order. We'll start with agenda item 6.4. Nordhoff has organized an exciting new course and program, and we're getting information about that, and the board is asked to approve that if the presentation's good enough.
No pressure.
No pressure, right? Grace under pressure.
Greg, I brought a couple of copies of this one.
Wonderful. And I have an
There's no
additional
shortage of
copy.
material.
Okay, good. I trust you have read the textbook and you have completed the textbook, the 90 hours of required, and you all know now your calling, your focus. Yeah. Well, let me start by directing your attention to this wonderful picture.
I want you to know Jane rattled off a lot of the names.
Yes, these are our top seniors. Sometimes there's 10, 11, 12, so we used to call them top 10. But every year, for the past several years now, we've taken a picture of them and we're sort of putting them up in our very visible spot in our office so that we can celebrate them. But here are 10 fantastic, motivated students who really understand that hard work pays off, planning's paid off. They all have wonderful options ahead of them, post-secondary options, many of them going to college, some of them getting significant scholarships. And you can see the joy on their faces. I don't think I said anything particularly funny before I took the shot.
Although it's a really cute photo.
It is. This isn't the one that we'll necessarily put up. But, you know, in thinking about how do we get more of our students at the end of their senior year to look like this, that's why I included it, and that's how it relates to this program. We want students to graduate Nordhoff with as many options for their future selves as possible. And we have always talked about, for as long as Kim and I have been in the business of trying to organize a whole school program, we've always talked about how to do that. We've had a good program with our counselors taking time with each grade level, maybe 3 days. It used to be 5 days. When we got instructional minutes cut back, they had to reduce that time. But think about 3 days every grade, 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, 12th grade, where the counselors would take students out of their class and give them sort of a crash course on, hey, what are you interested in? What do you think how that might connect with a career and what college? And oh, here's some financial literacy that's really important for you in terms of how you're going to live on your own and how much to save.
It's a crash course.
It really is a crash course.
And do much of it on your own. Like, here's what you need to know.
Yep.
We'll work on it together, but you really got to work on it on your own.
So in many ways, what we're proposing here is a formalized expansion of what we have done and found to be successful, but the only reason we don't feel like it's as successful as it could be is because there's just not enough time. And the information often comes too late because you only have 3 days in the freshman year, so you have to choose carefully what you're going to say, and then, you know, you have to say other things the sophomore, junior, senior year, and, you know, the comments are often, oh, if I would have just known that last year. Where we landed is a nationally utilized course called Get Focused, Stay Focused. Now, in schools don't call it Get Focused, Stay Focused. They rename it for their own purposes. I know that at Carpenter High School, I think it's called Freshman Seminar. At Santa Barbara High School, and it actually emerged from the Santa Barbara area. So it's interesting that it's a national program, but it was designed somewhat locally, and we've all been trained now. Dave Munson, assistant principal, Kim, Carly, head counselor, the 2 freshman teachers that we propose are going to teach this course. We've all been trained at these trainings that are often run at Carpinteria High School, which is sort of their model high school, and they have excellent staff there, staff that's willing to help us implement. But since it was going to be a low-tech night because we had all the moving chairs and tables, this is your PowerPoint. This is your PowerPoint. But really, if I could describe to you what it is in a nutshell, for lack of a better term, it really is just a major upgrade to our current college and career readiness planning curriculum for our students. So if you look closely at what Common Core is asking, philosophically, it's asking some really important questions about how we prepare students, but to summarize, we want to graduate students that are college and career ready. Everything they should be doing in high school should be relevant to college and career work, and I know that there are some maybe legitimate arguments to that. There are some things that are valuable just in terms of that won't impact the student's pocketbook per se, but it will impact students' intellectual life, their understanding of culture, their ability to keep up cultural conversation. But this is what the Common Core is asking of us.
I'm going to just jump in and share one thing I love about this is the ability for a student to create a greater sense of context for why they're going to school in the first place. The kind of conversations we have in the counseling office have a lot of times to do with those underperforming students. It's like, well, I don't know why I'm here. And this helps them to figure out why they're here. And so for me, when I look at this, I think, gosh, this is so awesome. I want every kid to do it. I want my children to do it. It's awesome. It's really impressive.
It really is leveraging relevance. You know, at the trainings, they have some fantastic little some quotes and various things. But one of the things that the kids said, they brought in a series of kids at Carpinteria High School. I was there a couple weeks ago, and the kids said, you know, it was my favorite course because it was really all about me. That was the curriculum, was me. So, you know, if egocentricity defines the adolescent period, then boy, we've got the course for them. So, it is designed in 3 segments, and they're on the cover of this is the textbook. So there's textbooks and there's workbooks. And just to orient you further, it is a freshman course, a 1-semester course. And then there are follow-up modules. So when you hear the word modules, that's the sort of the 3-week revisit that happens at the sophomore, junior, and senior year. So again, think about what we've had: 3 days, 5 days at max, maybe 3-4 years ago when we didn't have so many furlough days or decreased instructional time, compared to now 3 weeks at the sophomore, junior, and senior year and an entire semester. There's just a lot more we can do, and we can press a little harder down on the lever of relevance and getting them to think about their future selves. So if you go to that 4th page, I think it's the 2nd page for you, backside. Again, it's a semester college and career exploration, where at the top says Get Focused, Stay Focused. And the way it is designed at SBCC and the way it is currently being designed at VC and Moore Park High School is that it's a dual enrollment course. So there's an articulation agreement that happens between a high school, participating high school, and a community college. So one of the selling points for students is you now are a college student. You have college credits. You have a college transcript. And this is the start of it. We have many students, as you know, who go to Santa Barbara City College. And even though we're in the Ventura County Community College District, I don't know how it's going to work, but I'm fairly certain that Ventura College is well along the path of getting an articulation agreement.
So the local grant director for SB 1070, her name is Karen Nicholas, and she also works for Moore Park College, so she's in charge of the articulation process. So Moore Park, Santa Barbara City College, they're further along in the process of articulation agreements, but we've already been sent the documentation to complete the articulation agreement for Ventura Community College District. So that's just, once we hear from you guys, if we get the green light, we'll go ahead and actually pursue that. But it's really an exciting thing for our students to have the sense that, wow, I get to earn college credit as a 9th grader. And we've heard that that's been a very effective tool to help students think a little differently.
Yeah. And feel free to ask questions
Yeah,
as we go through.
interrupt
So
us.
this is very, very informal.
Articulation?
Essentially, what we're doing is saying, here is what is expected for a student to actually earn credit at the collegiate level versus here at the high school level, and they're really supposed to be parallel. So the course itself is expected to be 90 clock hours. And we have some flexibility about how we choose to set that up. So for us, we're looking at a 75-hour course with an hour of homework per week, equaling 15 hours roughly.
So it's just an MOU between a district and a community college saying that they will grant college credit for this course even though it happens on a high school campus.
And then you lay out specifically what you envision to teach
Exactly.
and how much.
And we end up paralleling based on the guidance that we receive from the trainings that we've attended. So.
One of the reasons why this program really spoke to me, one of my stump speeches with students was always about thinking about their future selves. And the linchpin parts of this program is students develop a 10-year plan that they revisit each year in the modules, in the return modules, their sophomore through senior year, but they develop a 10-year plan. So at its core, you're no longer a child, you're an adult, and you need to start thinking about the adult world, which includes goal setting, which includes a transcript that you are developing, that colleges will see, that a resume that your employer will see, things that you're doing that you'll be able to put on a college entrance essay. That's why we feel really strongly about having it at the first semester for all freshmen, and that's actually what is recommended to us by Carpinteria High School, and they don't do that. They say if they could change their program, that's the one thing that they would change. They have it flip-flopped where some students take health and world geography first semester, some are in get focused, stay focused, and they flip-flop. So our plan, I'll get to it a little bit more in detail soon, is that all freshman students are first semester take it. So you have that window of opportunity to speak to them at that transition where they are primed and more able to hear something.
Right, and hungry to understand what it's like to be a high school student.
And also we know, well, part of this too is to prevent students from failing, from digging themselves a hole. And we know that, unfortunately, students dig themselves a hole within the first couple of weeks of school.
Right, it's a preemptive strike to a large degree on the kind of underperformance that comes when a student doesn't understand why they're in school or doesn't really care. And what I like about this program is it also helps students to develop a vision for their lives. So it's not just about college and career, but it's also about, all right, what kind of lifestyle do you want to have? What's the financial element that's going to be required from you? What kind of career are you going to need to have in order to sustain that lifestyle? And as the parent of young teenagers myself, I can certainly just tell you, yeah, they don't always really have a sense of the value of a dollar, but this program actually helps them to develop a sense of that in the context of, well, what do you want to do with your life? And so the real magic is in the testimonials, like Greg was saying, from the students who've gone through the program. That, for me, was a really big selling point when I thought about, gosh, if every kid could walk out of high school really that excited about learning and that excited about understanding what they wanted to do. And even if they changed their major, because some of them said, oh, I thought I liked this as a freshman, but I wasn't so sure by the time I was a senior, I changed my mind. They have this online component that mytenureplan.com, so they go and they take all of that work forward with them rather than it being in some file folder somewhere in their room. I mean, we are a technological generation as young people, and so for them to have that be a living, breathing online thing that they can access, I think is tremendously powerful.
What are they taking right now that they wouldn't have time in their daily schedule?
Great question. Actually, let's go to page 4.
Yes.
It's 4 views, so mine's not double-sided. So at the top it says, how Nordhoff students will get focused and stay focused. I think that's the front of, yeah.
I'll be anyway.
Thank you. Here's how we propose, and by the way, we've been talking about this maybe for a year and a half, and I'll be honest and say that I was hesitant initially because there's nothing worse than a program foisted upon a reluctant teacher. And we all know that how quickly that can die in the classroom. So in my mind, and I think I told this to Kim and Carly, let's send our 2 freshman teachers, both of whom are really actually well suited to teach this class, Chris Boney and Jim Hall. One's a health teacher, one's a world geography teacher. Let's send them to the training, and if they get excited about it, then I will really look at it.
So I spent those 2 days with them, and within the first hour, they looked at me and they said, "We want to do this. This is amazing. This has so much promise." And they said, as much as we love teaching health and world geography, we could see that being more truncated.
This is what our students need.
Yeah.
So imagine them here with us. They each had a commitment to be here tonight, so that their absence in no way says that they're not as enthusiastic as we are. So Jane, to answer your question, right now, health and world geography are each a semester. World geography is not a UC ADG class. It's a class that we designed, that we felt like is important for students. And it used to be other things. Actually, when I started teaching here 20 years ago, that one semester class was Introduction to Social Science, and we would spend 2 weeks on psychology, 2 weeks in sociology, 2 weeks in anthropology, giving them just sort of a survey of the social sciences. So we changed it because we felt like world geography was more important, particularly for students that might be a little more geographically isolated, don't maybe get out much. We wanted to figure out a class that would show them the world. We are proposing, and with the consent of the teachers, that we trim those 2 classes, health being one of the ones that we trim, and actually health, the amount of content that you're required to teach in health, according to the GSR, which stands for Golden State Requirement in Health, is maybe about a month to a month and a half of content. And we're not at all suggesting that the rest is frivolous and unnecessary so we can cut it. That's a loss to cut some of those health topics, but the required health topics will be retained, and health and world geography will split 3rd and 4th quarters. And with our new semester schedule, whereby the first semester is ending before winter break, that all of our teachers are thrilled about, that actually means that the first and second semester are disproportionate with each other. So there are 3 weeks more instructional time in the second semester. So it actually benefits this course greatly, and it's a good time to make that jump. So the first semester, which is a short semester, will be all Get Focused, Stay Focused. And the second semester will be a split by quarter between health and world geography.
And will those 3 weeks be used at the sophomore, junior, senior year for the Get Focused, or will it be?
Yes, so we have not made definitive decisions about which class we will carve out those 3 weeks from. I know that at many schools it's done in the English course because there are a lot of...
There's writing.
There's a lot of Common Core standards that you can easily hit by doing writing, nonfiction, reading, that relate to the content required for those 3-week modules. And some courses do them in history, so you really have to choose either history or English because those are the only 2 classes that everyone will have every year. So luckily, Chris Boney, one of the ones teaching this, he's the department chair, so I think we have a ringer there. We can work that out with history. And we are planning on waiting to, really this represents a major cultural shift for our school. It's not just a class, but it is hopefully going to generate a cultural shift on the part of our students whereby they are moving through their high school years more likely to look like these kids at the end who have traveled 4 years with a vision of their future selves all along, and with thinking about all the things that we hope that parents are talking to their kids about, but when we survey our students, we know that parents are not having the kind of and the number of conversations with students about post-secondary options as maybe we would like to see. And that's one of our yearly questions that we
the
ask.
responsibility of our school to try to create those conversations, and this could actually create that clearing for that to happen.
So we're going to, again, if this is approved, we're going to invite some fantastic teachers who run the program at Carpinteria to come and work with our staff a little bit about what Get Focused, Stay Focused means for the school. And they have some really nice techniques to get people on board. But truthfully, one of them simply is everyone describe what you would want out of a graduating senior. What kinds of, outside of, can they, do they really understand Othello and Hamlet and that sort of thing? What do they look like? And invariably, people will describe the exact sorts of skills that this program is trying to teach. So I don't think it's going to be a tough sell. I think it's going to be something where most teachers will realize that maybe we're getting, this is our hope, of course, that we're getting more engaged, more focused students in all of our classes as a result of this program. So giving up 3 weeks in their sophomore, junior, senior year is a small price to pay.
And remember, it's not 3 weeks all day, it's 3 weeks of single period.
Yeah, and it can be broken.
So, and broken up into different courses. And I think something to keep in mind too is with the shift to Common Core state standards, there is more flexibility, especially for example in social science, in terms of the nature of where testing is taking place. We have a bit more flexibility, and I think that that's something, in terms of the timing of when this could actually happen, we're at a good time curriculum-wise to be having these conversations.
Any thoughts? I mean, I doubt that you would have, so I'm not expecting this, but how that would be implemented for someone who came their junior year to Norma?
Actually, it's a great question. I thought about that quite a bit because I have a sophomore age child, and I thought, gosh, how could we get it so that our upperclassmen could have access? I can't promise that this will happen every year, but we have been offered the opportunity to have a funded section after school by the Career Education Center from VCOE. So we actually do have someone who will be coming to teach it after school for upperclassmen next year, provided that you guys give us the consent to do that.
And that's actually an extension of a really successful program that we've had now this year. We've had first ever after school Ventura College courses taught on our campus where they're all Nordhoff students, and they've done exceptionally well. So we had child development and
nutrition, and then next year sociology for a semester, and then intro to criminal justice.
And perhaps even this one as well. So there's just a movement, a culture of increasing cooperation between community colleges and high schools, and we're really happy to be a part of it.
The other thing to keep in mind is this course is offered at the community colleges. So let's say for some reason a student doesn't get to take it with us and they can't make it work given the options that we have. For example, they could take it as personal development 110 at Santa Barbara City College. I think it'll be counseling 100 at Moore Park, and there'll be another name at BC, but they'll essentially be the exact same course. So if that helps.
I don't know if you would like me to start orienting you around all the books and what they all mean. Maybe I'll just do that super briefly. There's a textbook. So when we talk about textbook, this is the textbook. This is reusable. These are the workbooks, grade level workbooks. I don't know if I have the freshman book.
They're consumables.
Consumables. And I think the best part of the presentation, I saved it for last, it's all paid for by the VC Innovates grant. And we got great news. I was talking with Michael beforehand that the round 2 grant that we were a part of just was funded as well. So, and that actually is giving us access to Naviance, and Naviance is a whole another side of this, but that dovetails in really well because it's the online communication portal between counselors, parents, and students, whereby everything we used to do sort of paper meetings can now be done online. A counselor can give a student an assignment. Maybe it's say you need to prepare
a brag sheet
or a letter of recommendation request, that sort of thing, and the parents will get the update, and they can track each other's progress. And that all used to be, us chasing students down in the quad during lunch and snack. So.
And then actually beyond that, Naviance can also help counselors to be able to look at the nature of the data about any given student and generate potential colleges that a student would be a good match for, both safety schools, reach schools, and hey, these would be perfect profile schools for you to consider. So it's really exciting because you probably have heard kids tend to apply to the same 30 universities, and if people stop doing that, then we might actually have a better sense that universities are not nearly as difficult to get into. So anyhow, I'm excited about what that could bring to us, and I can't help but get excited.
So I think I'm looking forward to your questions. I think if I were you, I would be asking myself, or I would be saying, okay, is this just a lot of fluffy, soft psychology in here, sort of personal exploration and self-affirmation, and because actually my first time I ever opened this book, I flipped to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and I thought, here's that squishy soft science. But I hope you get a chance to look more deeply.
Yeah, so I am okay. He's making
both
fun.
taught psychology at some point, but there really is really important things in here that we've never been able to put into the curriculum at the right time. We've talked a lot about financial literacy. I know after the crash we were approached by several people saying, our kids really need to understand credit, and they really need to understand. And we said, yeah, we have a government economics class that they get at their senior year, and it's always, it's too late. It's kids need to really grow up understanding that stuff. The financial literacy, the the resume building, some of the soft skills, but are really important. Actually, when we were at Carpinteria High School for the training, we were invited into the classroom and we had to interview kids because it was interview day, and so we got to practice interviewing. And I know that I was actually at Matilla Junior High School just a couple days ago when they had the Rotary interviews. Have you been a part of that? And I had never seen that before, but again, it's that sort of thing that elevates students to be a little bit more sophisticated, get a little closer to grappling with the fact that childhood's over. Let's try to get shape you and transform you into adults, and that's really what we want of high school. High school should be transformative, where we're, like we say, we want our students to be the kind of people we would hire, the kind of people we'd like to live next to, the kind of people we'd love to be friends with.
This is the kind of program we would want to have our own kids complete. That, wow, if we had this in our own high school experience, we would have been really prepared for that next level as well. So when I look at this, I say to myself, I think any person who really went through this curriculum, they would understand how relevant and how important it really is. So, do you have questions for us?
Yeah, go ahead.
I think this is great. It really would help identify students with potential problems early on, I think, because sometimes, like you said, they start having problems and they get in a hole and then there's no way to get out. So I think that sounds really good. Will this impact the AVID program at all?
No, I appreciate you bringing that up because AVID, is everyone familiar with AVID? Okay. I'm sorry?
Explain it real quick.
Okay, so AVID stands for Advancement Via Individual Determination. It's another national program. Many schools are called AVID schools. We have AVID grade level courses. We have a 9, 10, 11, 12 course, and then we have a 12 course. Brian McCall-Michaels teaches it, and it was originally designed to support students who maybe didn't have a household tradition of going to college, and they just need a little extra help along the way. Everything from academic support like note-taking and how to ask good questions in class, and they teach students how to use Cornell Notes, to preparing students for college applications, and they would have requirements with community service, so they had something to write about. It's really a college prepare to apply to college support class. In many ways, this is similar to AVID. It's more than that because it has the financial side of things. So it's not going to compete with AVID. We will still have AVID. And again, we're really lucky that, again, this is paid for by a grant. We have also a local AVID donor that helps us out with offering AVID. But in many ways, this turns us into sort of a school-wide AVID program, which I'm in favor of.
What percentage of the students are in AVID?
Very few. So
we're really talking about
we've been reduced to there are maybe
sections, maybe 60 students.
huge scope difference.
Oh, yeah.
Certainly, maybe 7% of our student body is in AVID.
Yeah, so again, looking at this picture, how do we do a good job. We get a lot of these students. We get a lot of these really happy students that graduate at the end of the year with a fantastic set of options. Is it everybody? No, I think we can do better. And so we've been looking for a program that will do
I just
that.
have one more question. So this also covers things like interest payments on credit cards and how much a car really costs if you're paying interest. So all that stuff is included.
I included a few, I got a little rushed at the end here, so I was taking pictures and I wasn't happy with my pictures, but if you take a look at the back of this pamphlet that I created for you here, it does provide curriculum on budgeting, cost of living. I don't know if I included that. I apologize if I didn't. Okay. Home affordability. So right now, one of the things that our counselors do, I think the junior year, is the students create a budget and they have to go online and use Craigslist to look at how much it costs to rent in a various city that they want to live. But again, it just scratches the surface. This has to do with a 10-year plan. Like, okay, do you plan on having kids? Here's how much.
Where do you want to live?
Kids cost, how much.
What kind of house?
Furnishings. Everything. It's really in depth. And one of the interesting comments that the students made at Carpinteria that we talked to was, this was a parent that made this comment. My kids stopped asking me for stuff because they realized how expensive things were. And there's
Well, they use that little acronym KIPPERS, Kids in Parents' Pockets Eroding Retirement Savings. And that the idea is to help the community understand that it's to prevent our students from coming back with a degree that they don't understand why they got it, to actually be out in the world. You know, the idea is decide on the career you want, then decide on the major, then you decide on the school. But the order for a number of students is out of place. And so this really helps them to get clear on who am I? What do I really want and enjoy? What am I good at? What skills do I have and what skills do I need? And then where do I go to get what I want? And I do think that that will build a better connection because, I mean, unfortunately, we all know people in their 20s who, for whatever reason, aren't launched necessarily. They might have that degree, but they may not have that springboard to where they really want to be. So
Well, I think
hopefully that
it's
will help.
important to note that, I mean, a freshman in high school is not necessarily going to stay on the path that they planned.
Absolutely.
But that at least that gets them to a spot where they're prepared to go to college. Because I even feel like the 18-year-olds, you know, a lot of these schools are demanding that they pick a major. They didn't used to do that. It used to be closer to 20.
Because they want to get it out in 4 years.
And it's a little, yeah. So even though it sounds silly to me as a parent, for a 14-year-old to say what I'm going to do 10 years from now, this is the job I want to get. But I like the idea that it sets them on a path to try to achieve something by the time they finish high school. And that sets them up for another path if they choose it. So.
They really learn how to set those goals and create a path. Once you learn how to do that, you can create a different path at any time, but at least you know how to create a path. You know, Dave Munson and I, when we were at Carpinteria, we snuck out of the meeting for a little bit because it was lunchtime for, not to go eat more food. Food was good. We snuck out at lunchtime because we wanted to go talk to some students. And so we sort of wandered around the quad talking to students, asking them about the program. And it was actually quite positive because, you know, when they sort of curate who comes in and talks to the folks, you always wonder, like, well, you know, is that the whole story? Some students said, yeah, it was too soon. I was a freshman. I didn't know what was going on. All of a sudden, they were asking me to think about my life, and it was too soon. And that was the most negative thing that they said. Most students said, yeah, it was an easy A, but I learned a lot, and you know, I've totally changed my path. But if the most negative thing that was said about it was I was in a daze and I was too young, you know, that may be decent praise.
As a comparison, Santa Barbara Unified School District is moving this curriculum to 5th grade. They've actually had it in place for 5 or 6 years. And they've decided they wanted to do it even earlier, which will be interesting to hear what that's like for them.
We should do it in kindergarten.
Who do they think they are? Maybe we'll show them.
We do this in But anyhow, I think that that's just a testimonial to, you know, there is an engagement and an excitement when students know at least an idea of what they really are excited about, you know, in terms of their academics. It really does make a difference.
Are there other questions?
Yeah, I think this is a really good program. I kind of look at this as sort of super contextualizing learning because, you know, I remember when I was in high school, I took what they put in front of me. And I took it because they put it in front of me. I had no idea what I was learning or why, right? Or what I was going to do with it or any of these questions, right? I was trying to figure out what to do with my paper route. And that was it. That was the biggest question I had to deal with. So I think it is important, and I think you're giving them, as you say, the skills to ask themselves these questions moving forward. But it's not enough just to go to school. What you're going to be teaching them is why. Why they're going to school, why they're taking those classes, why they're taking those lessons. And that's the important piece of this whole program. So that's the part that I think is really, really good.
And two more. So is there any statistics from CARP about, like, before we started, 30% of our kids went to college, and now 48% are going to college?
No, the number one statistic, I think they do have that. The number one statistic that I remember most is that their D and F rates plummeted. And that's really what most schools report.
Say that again.
Their D and F rates plummet.
The numbers of
The number of
Ds and
students that have Ds and Fs, multiple Ds and Fs, plummeted.
And that's an area we can definitely work on improving.
So in terms of college going rates, I can find that for you. I'm sure that's a part of the large binder that they offered me.
And then the last question is, my first concern was, how much is that going to cost? So I'm very happy about the grant. But
Well, let me clarify that. We are being funded for 2 full what's the word? 2 full
Cycles.
series, cycles, thank you, 2 full cycles. So next year's freshmen covered all the way through their senior year. The year following,
Class
freshmen.
of 2019 and the class of 20.
So I guess you'd look at it 6 full years, 5 full years, excuse me, 5 full years.
Right.
And
So that was my second question, was these workbooks.
Right, the
Even if
workbooks
we
are
get
consumable.
this,
And as you can tell, this is a soft cover book, so it's ideal for it to be kept in really good care, if that makes sense. So we've actually been funded by SB 1070 for the actual textbooks. And we have enough to be able to fund the books for the after-school class as well as the daytime classes for the entire next year and on an ongoing basis. At some point, there will be wear and tear on these books, but certainly we'll make sure that we take good care of them. The workbooks, however, are the things that go home with students, so these can actually stay in the classroom if need be. That's a conversation we'll have with our teachers once we kind of have a better sense of our next steps. But the workbooks themselves get written in and they get used. And so, Greg, maybe you can speak about the Brewery.
Well, before we knew that this grant was going to cover it, we knew that SB 1070, which is a state grant, was going to cover certain things, and there was a gap there. We wanted, if we were going to do this, we wanted to at least have it for a full cycle, a minimum. So with the knowledge that we have the grant moving forward, or prior to the knowledge that we had the grant moving forward, we approached Rotary because they expressed some interest in helping support college and career readiness. And they were very interested. And they said, let's wait to find out what role we can play until we know whether or not the second grant comes through.
Mm-hmm.
So,
which it did.
Which it did. So now we just have yet to go back and find out if they want to be involved to extend the life of the program, or maybe we have enough, 5 years to commit to see whether or not it's the right fit for our students given our goals.
So I have a few. As a governing board member, I think you nailed it, Greg. From my perspective, I think the question is, are you displacing, real academic rigor for something, your term, squishy? Is there within, I think it's great. I mean, I was actually just talking to Ann Inman over the weekend, and we were talking about, the key, one of the keys in probably adolescence is realizing you're on a road.
Yeah.
You are on a road, and if that road is going to Bakersfield and you stay on the road, at the end of your trip, you'll be in Bakersfield. So this sounds like a great program in that respect, but I do of course have concerns that you're displacing hard, what I would call, standard subjects, and replacing it with something more subjective. I also, I know a number of kids of this age, many of whom are quite sophisticated. I wonder if this will seem sort of pedestrian to some of them, like those 10 people that you point to.
I can at least speak to having students look at the book, because that was one of the things I did. I actually had a few high school students look through the book. And I don't have the notes with me, but they actually wrote me little notes about it. And the content was, wow, this is really cool. I wish I had this a year ago. These were sophomores and juniors who had written this. I hear your concern about the squishy elements of it, but what I can tell you is, I think to a large degree, self-knowledge is underrated. And I think we have to really ask ourselves, if students don't buy into school, all of the other stuff doesn't matter. And so I would have to just argue that it is worth having a commitment to self-knowledge as a basis for one's education. And not that the other academic stuff isn't important, it most certainly is, but I think within a context of self-knowledge, it becomes far more powerful and far more relevant. I think if you want to get down to the nitty-gritty of, if we move these and we reduce, let's say, geography from its original content as a 16-week course, now it's going to be down more to, let's say, like a 9 to 10-week course. Well, what's that going to look like? Then where do those units go? I think there are reasonable ways to make accommodations for that within the social science department.
I was talking with Chris Boney, who's the department chair who teaches world geography, and that was a concern of mine too. I love geography. My kids don't get cookies after dinner unless they answer like geography questions. I mean, I love it. And I used to take
the Cookie Monster is going to be.
That's right. That's right.
Cookie Monster.
So I was actually very reluctant to let go of that course because you have a great fit with Chris Boney and world geography, because Chris Boney's literally traveled to almost every country in the world. It's a fascinating class to drop in on. He's got a story for every place. He's got pictures of himself in all these fantastic places. I really think it helps students expand their worldview as much as can be done in a classroom without actually going somewhere. So that was one of my top 2 hesitations, is to have that course somehow compromised. That being said, I know that the world history teachers are committed to incorporating many of the world geography things. That the world history course has never been great in my estimation. It's when it was standards based, it was far too sweeping to make any sense. It was far too sort of based and broad. And I think that adding geography in is going to help. So you're actually going to lose a lot less geography than it might look like on the surface. And the other point, to Chris Boney would always try to do some sort of orientation, goal setting, welcome to high school at the very beginning as well. And now
That's already built
so it wasn't. Was world geography a pure, it's day 1 to day whatever, pure world geography? The answer is no. So you're going to be able to incorporate a lot of that into world history. And on the health side of things, there are a lot of things in health that some people might call squishy and non-hard academics.
Self-knowledge, self-esteem, goal setting, all of that's already embedded into this.
So I think that those are fair questions. Those are the same questions I had. I think it's, again, after looking at the curriculum, it's a lot less than I would have suspected, and we're losing a lot less than you might easily predict.
Well, I'm going to support it. I would just, to the extent that there's any wiggle room, I would say range your responses as much as possible. The use of mathematics in a context. I mean, we've all aware of how do you calculate a mortgage rate or the rate of a car loan or what have you. But all those, I think, provide opportunities to kind of go back to core skill sets also. So I had
it's actually, your second question was really interesting, because that's the same question I asked the presenters was, what about, how do you deal with the parents who, they've had these conversations with these kids all along, and can a student opt out of the course? And they said no. And the way that the presenters said that they handled it was they invited these parents who were very skeptical to come in and be the presenters to the class on various topics. And that might have worked as a nice political solution to sort of bring the parents in, but I still have to say, when I think about my own kids, and I feel like I do a decent job of trying to be really open and honest with them about finances. Granted, they're only 9.75. Do you know how much that lollipop costs? When I look at this, it is a sequenced, professionally assembled curriculum. And being done in a cohort where there's just some value to learning in a community at a certain time. So, I don't know, I can have more conversation with you about that. I have some more thoughts on that, but I shared that same question and I asked it, and maybe we can talk about it more.
Well, and sometimes one size isn't perfect for all, but we do it because we think it's best for everybody. So.
Well, and there's nothing to say that hearing it from another person versus your parents isn't.
Well, that's really key feedback. That was one of the things that was brought up at the conference that I attended in January with the 2 teachers, is that a number of parents sometimes feel like they can't be prophets in their own land, and that their own kids won't listen to them, but of course they'll listen to somebody else. So I think once parents understand that this is certainly a way of helping to educate their kids in a manner that I think parents will be pleased about, but I think it does come with an opportunity for parents to learn about it. So
some of it has to do with what you named. So I know that in some schools they named it freshman seminar, and then when a student transfers in and it's a required graduation course, they're taking freshman seminar. Why does my son have to take freshman seminar? So we've been sort of kicking around a few titles, and we landed on college and career readiness. That's really what it is. Although it's CCR for short, which Creedence Clearwater Revival, as we know.
coordinated compliance review. We have to kids together.
John Fogerty check.
That's right.
Awesome.
John Fogerty is sponsoring this class.
I actually had a couple more logistical ones. If we don't use these funds have been are now available to us, are they specifically available for this course, or are they available in more diverse ways?
No.
This course.
Okay.
This course in this way.
And then the other thing is you kind of said something that, and then didn't say more about it. I'm curious, you kind of quickly mentioned that there were some classes, I think, after school that are offered by the community college. And then you said maybe this one too, and then I didn't know what you meant
So
by
I
that.
can speak to that. That's what I mentioned in terms of the Career Education Center through VCOE. They are basically in collaboration with this project. So if you can imagine, statewide, there is this ongoing set of communications that's going on between the state SB 1070 directors, basically the governor allocated money, and apparently there are 9 or 10 people who statewide have different regions. So our director is Karen Nicholas for this region. So she's working at the same time as Tiffany Morse is. Tiffany Morse is the lead person for the VC Innovates grants, round 1, which was passed over a year ago, and then round 2 that was just recently approved. So basically, Tiffany is saying we can allocate funds for an after-school section, a period of time where we can offer this course to upperclassmen. Karen Nicholas is saying, great, let's make sure we get the articulation agreement so that those students can potentially have college credit as well. So there's this kind of
They're going to send us a teacher.
Yeah, they're going to send us a teacher.
So we can put upperclassmen in.
Right. And meanwhile, Ventura College is also separately, but also in conjunction with us, they're offering courses on our campus, 1 course each semester. And they'd be open to more than that, but we feel like we're going to start with 1. We want to make sure we can actually fulfill on having a full class. And so far, it's been really effective.
And for the upperclassmen who would take it after school, for them it wouldn't be a requirement, I assume.
Correct. It's an optional
Voluntary
class.
thing,
Yeah, it would be.
At least at this point for the moment, you know.
You guys thought of everything.
We've had a lot of time to think about it in hopes that perhaps that would come through in terms of the funding. We didn't want to bring it, to this level unless we knew it could be funded.
Well, because of we're discussing our wellness policy, we have a lot of information on the 9th grade health class. And I do see that some of those units are actually covered in the PE class at the junior high. So it'd be interesting for Mr. Muth and Mr. Hall to discuss what, maybe if we have to truncate the health class, what have they already?
Yeah, that's actually done at many, I don't know, some high schools do that. They move the items in a health class that aren't required to be taught by a credentialed health teacher into PE, and they truncate their health class. So we could do the same thing. We could move those things because there's no requirement that a PE teacher can't teach some of those non-mandated state health topics, like nutrition and that sort of thing. So we could absolutely do that.
In fact, that's a fairly standard major, PE and health.
Good.
Oh, yes.
Are there other questions?
Thanks for taking on this extra work.
Yeah. My only comment is similar to what Kevin and Greg, you were saying. I always leery about courses that are, let me restate that. A lot of the stuff taught in this course is things that we just assume everybody knows. And we assume high school students know all this stuff. And there's no reason for them to know it. They've never been taught it. It's not part of the curriculum. Certainly there are parents who teach their kids everything in this course. But there probably aren't very many. And if we really want the kids to be the people that we expect them to be, we need to give them the tools to do that. So.
One of my favorite things about good teaching is making the invisible visible, and in many ways, you clarify that for me, is that this is one of those invisible things that we need to make visible to students, that we have sort of left invisible for some reason, because maybe we think that this is all, having these conversations at home, but I think we should become increasingly aware, changing demographics, what have you, that
More parents are working.
These things are invisible to kids, and they're invisible for too long in their lives.
Well, and I will be very interested to see the impact in the future on seniors, because remember, we just assume that in those prior years, they've done everything that the counseling staff has asked them to do, but we can assure you that we don't always see that, and we see a good amount of scramble, if you will, between August and October and then January. because students aren't always ready, because they're frightened. They don't know what to do, or they've already thought about it, but they haven't done the legwork. So I do recognize that to a large degree we're preventing some of that scramble. And so I think that for our guidance staff, we can be far more effective in the long term with those students.
Let me just say one thing in terms of timing. I shared with the board that this, and you said it well, Ken, that we wanted to be sure we had funding in place in order to be able to say we can move ahead as we want to move ahead, which is a little bit why, it came in that sort of late May, early June scramble, right? Scramble. And so at one point we were looking at this as a June 30th presentation. I'm glad we did it tonight, so if the board is supportive, you can go back and talk with your people full speed ahead.
If there are no interest in further discussion, is there a motion to approve the course?
I move approval.
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye.
Thank you.
You
Thank
got
you for
it.
having us.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Go and get them.
Appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
Get focused.
Get focused. All right, terrific, thanks a lot. We're now moving to,
See, there's another one here.
Oh, here.
yeah,
Thank you.
to our action information calendar, starting with 7.1.1. Just as kind of a frame around the next section, there are a lot of things that we need to do procedurally as a board at the end of the year, and these are a lot of those items. Hank, do you want to address each one?
Actually, I will, and then all of Section 7 in some form falls in that category, at least 7.4, 7.1 through 4, 7.5 is a little bit different. But, so let me just move through these expeditiously, but try to be as comprehensive as I can. 7.1.1 is actually very good news in the context of size. There are only 2 positions represented here. I had a conversation with the CSEA leadership. Chuck Overton's here as president. Their representative, Mark Love. Barbie Rice, of course, is involved in all this. And while we would love to see nobody on this list, sometimes circumstances change between years. And so we're talking about 1 4-hour position and 1 2-hour position among all the positions in the district that we're recommending for elimination because of due to lack of work, as we call it. Sort of a strange title, but due to lack of work.
Because of declining enrollment?
Yeah, it's really just it's changing circumstances and needs at the district or in the school. Instructional assistants vary hugely from year to year, depending on what the needs are in the school. And always depending on special education assignments. Okay? So in this case, we're looking at about a 0.25 position and a 0.5 position. So I recommend the approval of the elimination of these 2 positions for next year.
Okay, and why don't we take 7.1 together?
We could do that.
Take each
The next one is procedural but different in the sense that California is extremely specific about what teachers may do and may not do, and then what the district must do in order to provide for flexibility. I think it's a little bit over the top, but it doesn't matter what I think. 7.1.2 simply says we have 1 teacher in 1 school for 1 course, and that we would be convening the Committee on Assignments to review that person's qualifications, even though the person's highly qualified in science. We're now asking for the committee to take a look at this person as a technology instructor for a course. Now, you would expect that many science people are strong in technology, so I'm hoping the committee will view this positively, but what I'm recommending here is that you approve the construction of the committee for 2 years to address issues of this. That's 7.1.2.
So if there's no further discussion, can we have a motion to approve 7.1?
Can I just quickly, how do we choose the people on it?
There's 3 teachers and 2 administrators, and actually Andy will be in charge.
Andy will choose?
Well, he'll work with the OI Federation of Teachers, and the 2 of us will speak with a couple of administrators who will gladly serve on the committee.
Is it a volunteer position?
Oh, yes.
Thank you.
And it doesn't.
Thank you, whoever's on it.
It meets for a very brief time, once or at the most twice a year. This is not a big event.
Thanks.
I'll move to approve 7.1.1, or 2, whatever it is.
Both of them, yeah.
No. Yeah.
7.1.1 and 7.1.2.
Yes.
Okay.
Second.
Right, all in favor? Aye. All right, on to 7.2.
7.2.1, I've mentioned on a couple of occasions now, this major difference in our life between district of choice and inter-district enrollment requests. I've told you that we have a huge number of inter-district requests, but a very small number of district of choice requests, and as you can see here, these are the only 3 that we received for this coming year prior to January 1st of 2015, so I recommend the approval of these 3.
Hank, just to clarify, this is the category that we have no discretion on, right?
Well, basically, we could if we said we were full. Okay, you don't have to accept every district choice, but you have to explain why not. Inter-district enrollment, the burden is far less on the receiving district to do that.
Can we have a motion to approve 7.2.1?
So moved. I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, 7.3.
Okay, 7.3.1, and again, an annual presentation of X number of students involved with the California High School Exit Exam who were permitted to use a calculator by their IEP.
I'll move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
7.4, and we also have public comment on this item.
Oh, boy, it's my turn.
It was worth the wait.
Well, I'm not sure. I'm nervous over there the whole time. First of all, I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Angie Janassi. I teach at Topatopa, kindergarten teacher. I am also the newly elected president of the Ojai Federation of Teachers.
Congratulations.
Thanks. I don't officially take over until July 1st, but I'm still here speaking. I'd like to thank the district for inviting me to go to the May revision meeting that was put on by School Services the week of May 14th, May 13th. Besides getting to know Andy better, I got to learn a lot more about the state budget. And while there, I was so pleased to learn that California school budgets would be increased significantly. I learned a lot, and thank you for inviting me, Hank. I really appreciate that.
Thank you for going.
I have a lot to learn. Let's just put it that way. But I did see that we are getting a lot of money. And I'd like to ask that I'd like to ask the board, when you're looking at the Ojai budget for this year and in the coming years, that you make the compensation of certificated staff a priority. I've been a teacher in Ojai since 1993. I've had most of your children in my class, or at least next to my class. And in all honesty, I've never seen the morale of my colleagues be so low. Since our district began, hold on, let me take a minute. It's difficult. When declining enrollment started in our district, I felt like my colleagues banded together and we said, we want to help you. We want to help do what we can. And we increased our class sizes, we let go of programs, and we said, you know what, that person's job is just as important as my salary. And I know that I said that myself, that no, I think I want their job to be saved. I want them to be able to stay in Ojai, pay for the homes, do what has to do, and I will take a cut in my salary. And I feel like everyone did that. And we even do things that maybe we shouldn't be doing. You know, I prune the bushes in front of the school because I do that. And other people are pruning other things, and other people are picking up because we know that's what you do that's what you do, just period. So because of this, I just want to say I feel like it's time that the district sees us as a priority as well. Okay?
Thank you. Thank you very much. And welcome.
Yes, thank you for listening. I'll get better at it. You're not going to hear from me probably every month.
We'll look forward to it.
Okay, so Angie, thanks, and thanks to Merv and Craig and Wendy. All four of you were, as usual, articulate and poignant. And I don't want to say anything more than that tonight because there'll be a lot of chance to talk about the priorities that you mentioned for staff compensation come June 23rd. And just to remind everybody that we have a June 23rd special meeting. It's on budget construction, conversation, and a public hearing on the budget. And therefore, between June 3rd and June 15th to 17th, sort of in that range, Andy and Laura and I and administrators and leadership of both unions will be talking a lot about how that budget might look in the upcoming year. The material that's in front of you, prepared by Laura, and thank you for that, Laura, is a snapshot, and I want to be really clear. There are a lot of numbers, and Laura's introductory page is very brief and focused on some changes that have occurred, but the biggest change, of course, is exactly what Angie was talking about. The biggest change, therefore, from preliminary budget 1 on May 5th until tonight, about a month later, and in between was, of course, the May revise. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to talk sort of generally and with round numbers. So I think they might be a little bit easier to remember than numbers that have 6 figures and you have to remember exactly what every figure is. We deal with it every time, all day, every day, but this is the way I'd like to present it. So basically what we were looking at a month ago was a projected fund balance for 2015-16 of about $300,000 to $400,000. It was a little over $300,000. It's now grown to about $400,000 of that original corpus. And that was above the 2.25% reserve, right? So that was the amount of money we thought we had prior to the May revise. Then you heard Angie's description of what it was like sitting there, and all districts have been in some state of euphoria over the last number of weeks. And in general, you can see from Laura's report that that number increased from about 400,000 to about $2.25 million. So we received almost $2 million more dollars, right? $1.9 million more dollars. Now, this document that you're looking at tonight is, it would be wonderful if this document also included increased expenditures, which it doesn't. In fact, the expenditures that are represented in Prelim 2 are almost exactly the same as Prelim 1. Right, Laura? I mean, there's hardly any difference in a $23 million budget. The consequences of the change are so small. But the reason for that is that all the things that I've been talking about here for a couple of years and that the speakers presented to us tonight, the board knows all about in terms of choices that we have to make over the next couple of weeks, are not represented here. For example, the furlough days that are outside of the required 3 days return for next year, none of those dollars are in here on the expenditure side. The additional furlough days, right? The additional 2 days for the 2 union membership groups, the 4 days for the administrators, the 6 days for me, they're not in here. So the first thing, potentially, that I would be looking at, my priorities, and that I've had some great conversations with union leadership on this. The first priority when I construct that recommended budget for you to look at in the public hearing on June 23rd is the presentation of those furlough days. The corpus of that, the total cost of that, again, rounding off, is about $400,000. So however you define those furlough days, whatever they mean, and you heard one definition tonight, it's sort of getting back to zero, right? Getting back to zero, full calendar, that costs $400,000. Okay, so you're moving from a little over $2 million now, $2.25 or so, down about $400,000. So So now we're talking about, $1.7 million, $8 million that we have to make some choices about in this coming year. And we also know that the choices we make in this coming year will form the basis in terms of compensation for whatever the increases might be in the next coming years. The 2015-16 amount becomes the base upon which increases occur, however they may occur. They may occur because of a percentage increase for everybody. They may occur because of step and scale for people in the two, in all groups actually. Every group has an opportunity to move across and down salary schedules according to additional years or additional professional preparation, or both. So we have to make some critical decisions here in the next couple of weeks, and I very much look forward to June 23rd, understanding, of course, bless you, understanding that June 23rd is a presentation to you of our best recommendation about how dollars would be organized for next year, and then on June 30th, we'll be coming back to you and asking you to approve a budget which may be exactly the same as June 23rd, or it may not be. There'll be conversation on June 23rd, and if we need to make adjustments in that upcoming week, albeit more, well, I'll be working even more overtime to make changes between the 23rd and, about the 26th, But in any case, we'll make them should we need to. So, to sort of frame the challenge here, we're looking at that post-furlough day inclusion dollar figure in three dimensions, sort of in three pockets. One is exactly what we've heard about tonight, and that is an increase in compensation schedules that has not happened since 2007-8. The 2007-8 year was the point at which the salary schedules were frozen, established. 8-9 was frozen, and then 9-10, and year, that's how you got the 40 furlough days, to which Mary was referring, right? Okay, we all know that 8, 7, 6, 5, add them all, 40 furlough days for union members. So the first issue will be, what shall the increases in the compensation schedules be in 15-16, creating obviously additional expenditures and creating that base upon which 16-17 and 17-18, et cetera, would be constructed. That's one pocket. The next pocket is what I would just call program improvements. And most program improvements, particularly those that are related to the classroom and services and offices and administrative leadership, those come under the general heading of staffing increases. You don't do much without people. I mean, there's some things you can do that are one-time expenditures, and we know some of what those are, but the predominant increase that I will be coming to you on June 23rd for you to look at in that second pocket does deal with staffing. It has to do with improving the relationship, the ratio between teachers and students in classrooms. And in particular, I've said this again numerous times, the first place I went 4 years ago, and every year since then, and I'm going to go with more vigor in this coming year, is in the kindergarten through third grade classrooms, which had by far the biggest impact after CSR was set aside, by far, right? When we were no longer obligated to have 20 to 1, and we moved from 20 to 24 to 27 to 30, in some cases plus, that's where the biggest impact has been. So that's where I've gone back and tried to make the biggest improvements over the last number of years, and we'll do more next year. So in the second pocket, program improvements, predominantly staffing, some non-staffing, amount of dollars to be determined. And the third pocket, if you will, is fund balance. So I can tell you right now, I'm not going to recommend a budget on June 23rd where we spend every dollar we get. That would be irresponsible. Nobody would expect that. But there will be a fund balance that results from the construction of, in my opinion, return of furlough days, improvement in salary schedules, program improvement, and then there's some other dollars. Because the one thing we know from SSC, to which Angie referred, and every other source of information we have is that because of our declining enrollment, that the amount of additional money that we're going to see from the state, at least according to present criteria and assumptions, in 2016, 17, and 17, 18, won't look anything like the increase we receive next year compared to this year. It will be a fraction of that, amount to be determined. Sidebar, we're hoping to hear in the next 3 weeks, when the governor and legislature duke it out in Sacramento, that we will be getting more money for 15-16 than we now think we're going to get, because it looks like the coffers are even more overflowing than they sort of seemed they were a couple of weeks ago. How much more, we don't know, but I've talked about that with a number of people, including the leadership of the OFT. So that's the challenge. That's what this document is and what it isn't. It isn't a representation of increased expenditures at all. It is a wonderful statement about what we now know about increased revenues. And Laura has taken you through some details on the cover page. You can see basically that the increase in revenues from May 5th to June 2nd is split approximately equally between one-time dollars, as in bold underlined one-time dollars on your cover page, and ongoing dollars through LCFF. So that's where I am on all this. I'd love to give Laura and then Andy an opportunity to expand on what I've said, but those are my thoughts and our challenges that I see.
Yeah, that was quite a shock for us to see that LCFF gap go from 32.19% to 53.08. Never ever would have seen that coming. It was great, but it also puts us at about 91% funded to our total LCFF. So again, we're talking about the out years, the projections for the multi-year, which will be part of the adopted budget. You will see that on June 23rd. Our funding for next year right now with our projected loss in ADA, we're only going to gain, I think it was about 90,000. It was less than 100,000.
Right.
Well, that's not even enough to cover step and column. So it is something to really consider when Hank talks about the fund balance that needs to be retained for 15-16 moving forward.
Laura, when you say step and column, could you clarify what you mean?
Step and
Again,
column
we're on
is
video.
July 1, everybody on the salary that's on contracted, classified, certificated management, all move up in step.
They get a raise because they've been working here longer.
Correct. Our salary schedule for certificated has 15 steps.
Right, say some do annually, some do in pockets of years.
Well, yeah, generally the first 15 years a teacher is hired, they get a step increase each year. Then after that, we have what's called longevity levels. We have a 2%, 4%, 6%, 8%. So 2% is 16 years, 4% is 20 years, I think. And so there's, when they get up to 16 years, then they have to work 4 years before they get another 2%. Classified similar, we have steps 1 through 5, and then once we get to year 7, there's a 1.5% longevity, and year 9, there's a 2.5%. So that's what I mean when I talk about step and column is people that are just moving up in their steps will be getting increments of raises.
And the column piece,
Column piece has to do with the education of the teacher. If they get to their master's, that next year they go up to column 5 if they were at column 4. It depends on where they're at in their pursuing their credential level.
Laura, can you speak to these one-time dollars? I mean, who's to say that we won't get one-time dollars again next
Wow,
year?
yeah, this mandated cost claims, they're going back years and years. We've been filing mandated cost claims. I've been here 23 years. We've been filing
previous to when I was here, these claims. So we actually paid out of our general fund for a consultant to assist us in filing these mandated cost claims, which basically said to the government, yeah, we did all these steps that you're making us do to provide you with this report. There's probably like 20 different mandates that we filed claims for, and the government never paid us for them. It just sat and just built up this liability over, like I said, years. And so when the fiscal crisis hit, it's like, oh yeah, we know that this liability is out there, but we can't pay it, so they just stopped. They just didn't pay. So then about 3 years ago, they came out with the mandated cost block grant, which actually just told us, yeah, you got to keep doing all these processes that we used to file mandate claims for, but we're just going to give you a set rate per ADA basis, so we get like $95,000 a year just for our ongoing mandated costs procedures. But the prior year mandated cost claim liability was still out there, sitting there. So that's
So do they, after they pay this $929,450, they still owe us money?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I could pull out the years and years and years worth of claims that we filed, but I would have no way of knowing even how much of a dent this $929,000 is putting in that.
I guess for me, when we think about that moving forward, we have to save enough from this year's budget for the next year. But then if we get these one-time lumps, what happens to that money we were saving? Can we spend it in the next?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, you can spend, I mean, you may spend, the June 30th budget is sort of like, get focused, it's a blueprint for getting someplace. Okay? And we've done that. I mean, we've, not a lot. Well, the best example I can think of is when we, in 1 year, about 2-3 years ago, when we had more money in January than we thought we were going to have the previous June, I had an agreement with the unions that I would use a portion of that, $75,000 to $100,000, to buy back a day, so we could get back a furlough day. Okay. Now, that was 1/7 of the furlough days, but it was a day. We've done projects in technology occasionally with money that came our way, but it's been pretty incidental. Seriously, we haven't spent very much more because we got more revenues than we planned. But if there's some mid-year adjustment, I can assure you that we can look at it for sure. Now, the other thing is, if we have X amount of dollars in fund balance, and then we find out we're going to have X plus $200,000, one of the questions we would want to look at is, how are we going to do 16-17? What kind of compensation increases can we afford now that we have $200,000 more? And remember, and I know we're talking about it, that is money that is in the one-time category, right? And so, doesn't mean you can't, I've said this before, you can spend dollars that are one-time dollars on ongoing programs, like staff, but you have to be judicious.
Maybe you might know about this also, Andy. I could swear that Danny at one point was talking about these large debts that were owed by the state. And it indicated that some school districts had filed lawsuits and that others had sort of come to some seemingly less than 100 cents on the dollar agreements. So does that resonate with as something that happened? Or?
I don't recall any specific stories about. I know
Santa Barbara County.
Speak of? No. I remember the conversation.
I do too. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there might have been some. Didn't CSBA file a lawsuit for the mandated cost claims?
Yeah, they did the mandated as well as the methodology in which we get paid.
Right. Yeah.
That lawsuit is still going.
So maybe we just came to an agreement on the methodology. Maybe that's what happened.
My recollection is that we could either accept what they give us or sue for the whole amount.
That was kind of my recollection.
But I'm not solid on that.
That sounds about right,
By
but
accepting it was less than.
But at the point, when we were having that discussion, they weren't gonna pay us anyway.
Yeah.
So
That was
why spend the
probably
money to fight?
decision to
Yeah.
participate in the block grant a few years ago. That might have been what she's talking about.
Let's get Danny on the phone.
We'll leave her alone. We'll leave her.
But like you said, we weren't getting anything anyway, so to not participate, and then,
Yeah, thank you. It was definitely not talked about in any great detail.
And we didn't spend the time on it because it was a moot point at the time.
Andy, reflections? I mean, I know you've been in and around this subject before you came here, but particularly since you come.
Well, I'd just say that since I've come, actually specifically this week, I've spent the past couple of days going to many of our school sites for the first time. I've really enjoyed that process. And through that time, I've just been blown away as I walk with the principals that this thing was paid for by PTO, this was by OEF, this was a PTA, this was an instant of where this classified staff stepped up or this certificate staff did this. And so I know prior to coming here, being so new, prior to coming, that this district and this community has really gone through a lot these past few years. And so I do feel encouraged and feel like this is something the community deserves and something our staff deserve, is this change in budgetary projection from the governor. And so look forward to finding the best allocation of those dollars, but it is certainly a nice change from what I have heard has been occurring in the past. Something that Hank and Laura both have already mentioned, but I just want to make sure that we do, again, emphasize. LCFF, as I'm sure everyone is aware, came out just 2 years ago. The idea was to set a base level of funding for education in the state, and the goal was to get to that point in roughly a 7 or 8 year time span. Each district, starting from a different level, was going to be accelerating toward their goal at a different pace. Some districts, where I come from up in Santa Barbara County, already were at their target, and so they were seeing very little increase in dollars. The county offices are in hold harmlesses for 20 plus years, and so they too are not seeing the same influx in dollars that other districts are. As Laura said, we are now at a point...
Sorry, can you clarify, what's a hold harmless?
Sorry, so hold harmless means that we're not going to take away money. Based on the calculation in LCFF, a district or a county office may be expected to receive a certain amount of funding. They're actually receiving a little bit more, and they're going to hold you harmless, meaning that they're not going to take away dollars that you previously were getting. They just are not going to actually, you're not going to see the same increases in funding that other districts may be receiving.
We're not a hold harmless, I assume.
We are not, no.
Not even close.
Right. But we are at a point where, based on our current funding and where the LCFF gap funding has brought us, is that we're at about 91% of our target funding is where we'll get to. So as we look toward the future and see where finances may be taking us in the coming years, we know there's really not too great of a gap of where we're going to be going toward. There's not going to be a lot of growth, exactly. And so as Laura has shown in these figures, or I'm sorry, actually not in these figures, but in some other ones that I know that we've seen before, based on ADA reductions, going forward, we're going to start certainly leveling out far more so than what we're seeing in this current year. And so just want to emphasize that point that's already been made, that we have some real encouragement from the budget picture currently, but also a caution with where the future projections are going.
Once we're fully funded under the LCFF, does the governor expect to give us at least COLA every year?
So that, correct me if I'm wrong, but the goal is to still provide a COLA. This year, with the governor's most recent revision, it went from 1.56 approximately was the original projection, down to 1.02. So the COLA for this coming year is 1%.
Based on the actual rate of inflation?
Correct. Our current governor, and this of course will change in a couple of years, but current governor has certainly had a real emphasis and focus on being cautious when it comes to increasing another finance term in education, but Prop 98 dollars, which for our sake of discussion here is really just dollars that create a obligation going forward for continued funding at a certain level. has preferred to give one-time dollars over those Prop 98 dollars or toward LCFF dollars. So we'll see what the financial picture looks like going forward, especially as some of the recent, or the increases from Prop 30 start to phase out in the coming years. The governor's choice of which dollars will be one-time dollars versus actually going toward the contribution of what education should be entitled to.
And is there any more idea of the possibility of reinstating those the state meeting some portion of like a Measure J? You know, I think in the past there had been some funds. Matching funds, that's the term I was looking for.
That did not find its way onto any ballot provision. They talked about it, and then the water bond took over.
Right, and the governor really had a strong belief that this was something best really focused on and decided at the local level, and that wasn't something the state wanted to be as interested in funding. And actually, because I think it was somewhere around 68 to 70% of all bond measures across the state did pass this past election, it strongly reaffirmed his stance, and he's taken a stance that it's really off the table at this time in the coming budget negotiations. So his view is that funding for facilities that would be possibly funded under a local bond is not going to receive the assistance of the state.
We wouldn't be qualified for those anyway, right? Because we don't have an increasing enrollment, we have declining enrollment. And because when we did it before, we had increasing enrollment.
That would have been an advantage. The reason, I know Danny and I spoke about this, the reason we wouldn't qualify, even if it does come up, is there's so many other districts in the queue.
Yeah.
I mean, they all hundreds of districts pass measures going back a number of years, and whatever the application process is to get in line.
Yeah.
So ours is less than a year old. So this is for information. Laura, thank you very much. Very busy weeks upcoming.
Thank you, Laura.
Thanks a lot. This is, and yeah, for all your work to date and for the work over the next month. Yeah. And I have to say this. This is my first meeting sitting at this table in June where we weren't asking the question, what might we have to cut next year? So although the future is uncertain, the idea that we can finally give teachers something, maybe make a few classes smaller, improve some things, it's just what a gift. We probably can't get everything we want, but we're going to get something, which is really super exciting. All right. I think without objection, I'd like to take 7.4.2 all the way through 7.4.10.
I have an objection to that.
No objection?
I do have.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Yeah, I'd like to take them one by one.
One by one, okay. Then let's talk about them one by one.
I would just say as a group, first of all, Laura is by far the most expert person to speak about what each one means, and so Jane, I'm sure she'll be able to respond to your questions. And I think that's probably the best way to approach it. Okay, so if you decide to move one, then whatever conversation.
Sure. Well, let's start with 7.4.2 then.
Well, now, so if you have to go. It's not feeling
Yeah, if
well,
everyone
so
sees me
he
right
dashes
off, I
out.
can see. I've had a little stomach flu all day, and I thought it was important to be here, though. I want to talk about the budget, so.
It is.
Now, I still think everything's important. I want to be clear about that for my re-election campaign. But if I bail out, it's because I just can't do it.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So my question, should I dive into a question on the first one?
Let's just, 7.4.2, if there are any questions.
It says, authorize transfer between expenditure classifications and unappropriated fund balance necessary to prevent payment of obligations. So I was just wondering, what are those obligations? And can we get specifics, or do we
Well, I
need-
believe this item is to cover basically unforeseen emergencies. We can't possibly budget for every line item or blown pipe or whatever can happen at our, sites. It's basically just to give us flexibility to be able to transfer funds to pay bills that.
But I mean, it says this is for this year that's ending June 30th, and it's June 2nd, so it tells me that you're seeing that our maintenance budget is low or our classified stuff.
And when I go through and close the books, you know, it's, I'm gonna make sure that the bills are paid, that we may not have a budget to cover, that it still needed to be paid. So that our unaudited actuals is not going to follow the budget exactly, and that we have the flexibility to appropriate funds that aren't 100% budgeted. I guess that's the way I look at it.
So I guess what I'm trying to say is, so we have money somewhere that we didn't spend on something, because we now want to move it from, you know, buying light bulbs to buying a bus. I'm just making things up, right? So if you're trying to move it, you didn't spend it somewhere else, and I'm wondering what happened in that category. I mean, maybe it was insurance rates and they didn't go up as much, or maybe, but I want to make sure that it's not, I mean, because when I look forward, we're making these choices on salaries, and I'm thinking, well, if we have extra money, I want to make sure that in the future, we're not just spending extra money on whatever we decide we want to spend it on because it's extra. I think we need to say, we thought we'd spend, I mean, if I'm looking at it in my household, I thought I was going to spend $150 a month on cable. I got a deal, it went down to $125 a month, so I had this extra money. Now, because it's just me and my house, I can say, well, I want to spend that on a vacation. But we're a district, so for us to just say, well, we want to spend it on a vacation, I don't know if that's fair to just move it. I mean, so I don't have a problem specifically with this one because we're talking about 30 days, but I do have a problem with that process in general of just saying, well, we'll move money around because something was more expensive. If we're making choices to not spend money on something because we don't have it, and then we do have it, and we're just using it wherever we want instead of really discussing it. And I'm thinking of this in terms of the teachers, so that, you know, 1%, 2%, 3%, 4%, 5%, whatever we decide. It's like, are we choosing to keep it conservative? I know Danny was very conservative in her estimates, which is attractive to me, but not to the point where it's not realistic. So that's my concern with these
I hear you.
fund balances.
Right. There are a couple of different issues here. One is the management of a $23 million budget, day to day, month to month, and then through the course of the year. It is, and I know you know this because you run a business, it's impossible to know what's going to happen in January when you budget in June. But I think if you look at the track record of the last number of years, conservative would be an understatement in the sense that 5 years ago when we constructed the 2010-11 budget, I had to go sort of hat in hand down to the county and ask them for permission for us to only have a 1% reserve. So the track record of this board is that every dollar we possibly could spend in a 12-month period, we have spent on kids, staff, and program. The condition of our facilities is deplorable. So we certainly haven't spent money on that. That's why we needed Measure J. We could spend, and I told you earlier today, I'm looking forward to spending time with you, and if another board member would like to join us, and Andy and Laura, taking a look at that time period that you're talking about, like go back to 2013-14, or maybe use 14-15, and see how those line items were fluid and how they moved and why they moved. But you know, the example I could give you, which I used during the Measure J campaign, is when at 5 o'clock in the morning, I was out with local plumbers and our own people trying to fix a pipe that looked like it was out of the Middle Ages. Well, you know, we don't know if it's going to bust. But when you have a very, you know, almost razor-like thin line between money you have available and money you can spend on unexpected things, you have to have the flexibility to move money. The fact is that in terms of our staff, normally, if you look at a 12-month budget, you'll probably spend around 99% of it. Okay? So 1% of not spend is about $225,000, which doesn't go that far, but it is some flexibility you have over the course of all of the line items. The concept here of all these resolutions, some of which, as you know, as we talked earlier today, are required by the county. We have to submit that the board approved these signatures or approved this process. But the point of these resolutions, and the reason I called them pro forma in my notes to you on Thursday, is that without these, we're paralyzed. We would have to literally come to the board every month and show you line by line what we did, and then get your authorization to tell me or Andy or Laura to go ahead and do something. And the thing that needed to be done wasn't done because we didn't have a board meeting in time to do it. And that's sort of the best way I can explain it. So, in my opinion, you have three people here who are empowered to manage the district, manage the finances of the district, manage the person who manages the finances of the district. And in some cases, these are just signatures. But in the case that we're talking about right now, this is a really important issue, is how do we manage the budget? And I would say, if the track record were such that we had a 10% reserve and we were averaging about 97% of expenditures and on June 30th compared to the budget, if I were a board, I'd be really concerned about that because it looked like you didn't plan very well. The fact is, we're exactly on the other end of the continuum. We have almost no reserve, and we've spent almost every dollar. And as I recall, the last year we had an unspent unspent amount of $881 out of $23 million. That's about as close as you can get. Now, the key is whether or not the board supports the three people who are managing the budget and the district to make good decisions.
That we trust them.
That's the key, okay? And if you want to have more oversight, as in the board, a way to do that is to form a two-person committee to meet each month or every 2 months or every 6 months to take a look at those line item exchanges that you're talking about. We haven't done that before. I'm not recommending it because there's no track record to suggest we need it. But that's an opportunity for more involvement and oversight.
I think especially going to this point, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm not 100% on these things, but the big difference between the way a business works and the way the school district works is in a business, you have your bank account and you have a budget. And the budget is kind of a guideline of how you're going to spend the bank account money. In a school district, instead of just having that general fund, you have all these different little funds that we're required by law to set up. And that money goes into those funds, and without a board resolution for monies to be moved from one fund to another, they can get stuck in one fund. It's not like a business where, this is our budget, we're gonna stick to our budget. If the money's in that fund, and another fund, it's like your example of the lights and the buses or the chairs. If we save a little money on the lights, but we have an additional expense in the chairs, they can't spend the money we need on the chairs because the board hasn't allowed them to do that, because it's in the light fund.
So my concern then would be more in the June 30th budget. Then, like if I look at last year's budget, the line items that draw my eye that I go, wow, is the professional and consulting and services. So I feel personally that our district spends too much on that. So what my concern is that if we have extra funds that we didn't use to return a furlough day this year, instead we used it on professional consulting, I don't want the funds going to something like that. I don't mind if it moves from, electricity to curriculum books, because I feel like those are both things that either we have to pay or we need. But when I feel like there's too much money being spent on something that I don't feel is as valuable, I don't want more money going into that item.
Right, and that's one of the things, for example, anything goes on June 23rd. Any line item that you see is open for conversation. The one thing for sure we're going to do, because it's now come up not just with you, but other board members, not only here, but other places. I think the title professional consulting is absurd. It's not consulting, okay? It sends the wrong message. I can tell you since I've been here, we have hired a consultant, one to help manage our Measure J. That's the only person I've hired, a consultant, for $10,000. Okay, so what it really is required services like legal services and other things. I mean, there's a whole long list. The appearance is that we're hiring all these people to go help us manage the district. That's not true. But it sure is a great line item to explain. Okay, and so we'll have that breakdown for sure, because that's the one that comes up. You've raised it. A lot of people have raised it. It's the same as far as I know, Laura. It's the same title in every district. Right?
Yeah, it's a terrible title.
It's terrible. We didn't just make it up.
It encompasses so much.
But I agree. It sends absolutely the wrong message. Of all these, the one that I think most pertains to your concern is 7.4.6. So if you could talk about that one, Laura, because that's where you do interfund transfers. Again, it's a title that makes it appear sort of exactly what you said. You have a fund over here for people, and you have a fund over here for, not sure what it would be. It's not vacations. Okay,
Yeah.
but it is something other than staff costs.
Yeah, we make very little interfund transfers, that's for sure. For adopted budget, I have two for sure. I was showing that the food service fund was going to run short for 15-16, so we have an interfund transfer from the general fund to food service, to support the food service program next year for $10,000. That's an example of an interfund transfer. And also the adult ed program, again, is run out of a separate fund, Fund 110, and it doesn't have enough fund balance to sustain another year, so we were showing another interfund transfer in adopted budget of $10,000.
But Laura, that's, when you talk about adaptive budget, that's 2015-16 adaptive budget.
Correct.
You're trying to cover, you're covering whatever the opposite of overage
Because this resolution is to facilitate handling transactions in 15-16.
Right.
Which one are you looking at? I'm sorry.
7.4.6.
Point six.
But I'm talking more about during the year.
During the year, well, we use the other one for temporary loans. An example of a temporary loan.
7.4.7, okay.
Right, that's a different one. That's the next one over. So I was trying to give you an example of interfund transfer.
Got you.
So the temporary loan situation would be the food service account is running short because we're paying all the bills all month long. We're paying payroll out of the food service fund to run the food service program. Yet our revenues are 6 weeks out. When we file our claim, our reimbursement claim to the federal and the state, it takes about 6 weeks to process. So we've got this cash issue that we're not getting the revenues posted in the fund that we need to pay the payroll. So I get a call from county saying, hey, your food fund is in the red, and I got to be able to make a transfer that day. They literally want it done that day that they call me to cover the negative balance in the cafeteria account.
So Laura, though, from the expenditure categories to the interfund transfers, the genesis of all of this is generally someplace is short of money, and you need to find it to move it into that item. Isn't that correct? I mean, it's not like there's lots of surplus cash that you're looking for places to put. What you're really kind of doing is robbing Peter to pay Paul.
Correct, yeah. And like I said, just the fund balance has to be maintained, so we're talking temporary loans between funds.
I mean, to me, it seems like the alternative to passing these is calling a perpetually open meeting to sit next to Laura and have it televised, and every time she makes a transfer in the books, we have a vote.
Or not. I mean, like I said, you can. I don't know what you do. I don't know what you do if you don't. What I would recommend you do is that obviously I recommend you pass them, and then if there is a sentiment on the part of the board that there needs to be, or you would want to be more involved in the kind of processes that Laura is describing, then you just set up, as I said, a committee of 2 people or a 1-person committee to feel comfortable that these things are being done the way you feel they should be done.
You will also see these
Everything's open.
transactions through the interims. You're going to see changes, you're going to see appropriation transfers through the interims when we're moving, supplies budget spent more than what we had budgeted at first interim, so now I got to move money in second interim. As you're approving your second interims, you're approving those transactions, those transfers.
And every check is
Same
included in our
thing.
agenda.
And again, yes, the transfers, every expenditure list you see is, you're approving those.
Let me give you one other example, because I don't deal with that stuff, but there's something I do deal with. I would say every year I've been here, whatever the staffing budget was, let's talk about exactly, Jane, what you were talking about, but it's actually flipped over. We have a staffing budget, we have a contingent of 125 FTE, faculty, 100 classified staff, 15, 16 administrators, that kind of stuff. That's in the budget on June 30th. Okay, now kids come to Nordoff. They don't show up exactly where you think they'd show up. We have 46 kids instead of 33, and I need another section. So the typical conversation I've had with, with the high school principal is I need 2 or 3 more sections in order to not have 45 kids there. So within the first 2 weeks or so, we have typically 2 to 5 additional sections between Matilaha and Nordoff, mostly Nordoff, that we didn't plan for in June. So we have more staff appointments, more staff dollars, and once in a while, we even have an additional elementary teacher. So we never hire less, ever. Whatever the contingent was that we planned for in June, that's the minimum. Okay. So the change that you would see, for example, between June and September would be, first interim is December?
Yes.
December. That you'd see between June and December would actually be an increase every year. Am I right? Every year there's an increase in staff dollars. Why? Because, oh, by the way, 4 more kids showed up who have special education needs and you need special aids. Okay? So that's just the nature of the program. And all of these things are just mechanisms in order to have us run your program. That's what these
So
are.
7.4.8. The district reserves the right to consider and to improve compensation of confidential supervisory management.
That's another weird one, okay? Number one, we never do it. Okay, I mean, this makes it look like, I think on August 25th, we're going to increase the compensation of the management team by 5%. Just not happening, okay? I mean, you know precisely, you meaning the board, how many dollars the administration didn't get for furlough days, what my recommended increase will be once we have settlements with the unions. And that is all it will be. It's a meaningless, to me, it's meaningful because we have to do it. It's meaningless because we'll never do it. That's why I called it pro forma.
So then that's why I say then I'd rather vote individually, because I would vote no on 7.4.8.
Because why?
Because I think that we're deciding before the June 30th date what we want to spend on supervisory and management employees.
Well, I would say
change
this,
that-
I could live, unless, Laura, is there some county requirement that we pass 7.4.8? There probably is. In fact, it was in that letter.
It's saying in order to avoid problems concerning retroactive pay.
Right.
If negotiation continues, okay, into August, September, who knows? Okay, I have to start paying people July. Our 12-month employees get paid
Even if we
July.
don't have a contract.
So if, they are out of, management, they're talking specifically about non-represented groups. But anyway, so I'm paying them July, and then September, you approve a raise, okay, I need to be able to go back and pay a retroactive back to July 1 if you want to give our management staff a full year's worth of.
And I apologize because I misread it.
renegotiated
It says the board has the right to reserve to improve the compensation. Okay.
So it's a werewolf provision. In other words, don't listen to me if I'm in the cage and I'm all hairy. Don't let me do it. You have the right to do what you want to do. That's the point, right? I'd like to talk briefly about the the iterative budgets and the, what do you call them, the interims?
Interim.
So, I mean, just to be clear, I mean, people may be watching, my understanding is this is all quite transparent. Frankly, the idea that if you take money from the general fund and use it for some other purpose, we're actually being transparent by saying that wouldn't be proper to just pay it out of the general fund and just know among ourselves that that went for salaries. We want to say, we're taking out of the general fund, we're putting into the fund from which it properly should come, and therefore there's a clear record of what happened. And I've never done this before, I assume at the end of the year when we close our books, we will be able to compare the budget as conceived with the reality of how we spent the money, and we could ask you guys to highlight anything over 5% or anything. We could just point out how things changed, turned out differently and how we might learn from those changes. But that's all, it's out on the surface and available for everyone to see, right?
Yes.
So this, I just want to, because that helped me say, it's not for me a trust issue as so much a knowledge issue. So I'm not saying I don't trust our administration to do this. I'm saying it's difficult for me to see. Like, again, I go back to all those PTA years. If you say, oh, we're going to throw a fall fiesta and it's going to cost us $500, and then you went and spent $2,000, at the next meeting, you go, wow, the fall fiesta cost us $2,000, what happened? So I struggle with looking at this budget and go, what happened? So it's not, I don't trust someone, I don't feel confident in it because it's difficult for me to read. So
That's what I said.
It's difficult for anybody to read.
Yeah, that's what I said. I think if you're willing, if you individually, you collectively, only you can't have more than two people doing it at one time, want to sit down and become more knowledgeable about all of these mechanisms that Laura has to deal with. It's really Laura. We're fine. Okay, all I'm saying, what wouldn't be fine would be to not pass the resolution so we can't do anything.
I would recommend that you do spend the time, but,
Yeah, that's a good thing.
yeah.
And we're going to do it. We're going to have this 4-person meeting, and I just wanted to get past June 2nd.
But if there's not consensus to vote on all of them at once, let's just go through them.
No,
I think we've gone through them.
Yeah,
I'm ready
I
to
think
vote.
so.
All right, so
But can I add one thing?
Yeah.
Can we talk about maybe as a future agenda if it's already there? Certainly, the gist of Jane's comment, I think we must already do it, which is that, post-mortem, do we have a meeting where we post-mortem look at what the budget was, look at what actually happened?
That's what the interims are.
That's what we do in those interims.
They have multi-year
The first time, well, I say, but you're talking about for that year, right?
Well, I'm talking when we close these books.
Yeah,
When we
that would
close these
actually
books,
be
there
your
will be.
unaudited actuals.
Yeah.
I close the books usually about the end of August, so that in September, you're at, right, yeah, you're actually looking at, September, I think, is when we bring the unaudited actuals.
Right.
That's when we compare the budget to the actuals. And the auditors also look at that and look for variances and ask us questions, why wasn't this budgeted for, yeah. We go through all
Looking
of
back,
that.
the previous year, that's when we do it.
Yeah, that's what I'm
The first
talking about.
look,
That would
the
be
first
helpful.
look at the next year, the year we're in, is December.
First interim.
The first interim
Yeah.
of the year we're in is
And
December.
that's when you'll see.
We can look back by October or so.
Yeah, September.
Yeah, September, October, which we'd be happy to do. I just know what the reality has been looking back each year. I know what it is. I just know. It's like, whoa, really? That little?
And then just on 7.4.10, is there the word "to" left out of there? I don't know if it's important. The board is asked to designate representatives to the Ventura County School self-funding?
Where are we now, Sean?
I see
Yes,
that
that's
there.
missing too.
Okay.
You're exactly right.
Oh, I have a new one, that's why, I think it was correct.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah,
I'm ready to
great.
move on.
So 7.4.2 through 7.4.10, is there a motion to approve?
Move approval.
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye. All right. Wellness policy. We had a good discussion on the wellness policy at our last meeting. We have made some changes based on that discussion.
Just a couple. First of all, Lori, thank you for hanging in there. Suzanne, you were here before, but thank you for hanging in there. It's a long night for you. So Lori Hammer, if you don't know who Lori is the Executive Director of Food for Thought, OHI. You know Suzanne, and yes, you did. And the person who would have been in that chair, except she's now running the meeting that Lori isn't at, is Teresa Buller-Richards, who's the president of the board of Food for Thought, OHI. I talked last month about the three-person leadership team with Suzanne and Lori and me. Been thrilled to help be part of that. I think we did a really great job of conversing about the wellness policy. We had some good input, particularly, as you can see from the minutes, from Cheryl Beers and a little bit from Janine Murphy, whom we asked to comment. Therefore, those are the two changes in the document. Okay, one is a little bit of text about our anti-bullying program, of which I am so proud and I've talked about numerous times. I think the most successful student services program we've initiated since I've been here, under the leadership of Janine Murphy. And the second, as I pointed out to the board, a couple of spots in the text where there was a concern, I think a good concern, particularly that Cheryl raised in celebrations and rewards, which is page 5 of 12. The last sentence I've included, it is on me, it's my responsibility to meet with all the principals at the beginning of the year to be sure that we have plans in place at each school to address this overall issue. And I'll tell you now, they won't be precisely the same. You know that, right? Okay? It's school dependent, but the general theme is let's sort of cut down hard on those things we know we wouldn't want to be doing. And the second spot is on page 10 of 12.
But still allow some fun.
Some fun. Yeah, we got that. We got that, okay?
You can have a quarter of a picture.
And under leadership, superintendent designee will convene the group, and finally, actually that was already in there, I'm sorry, page 11 of 12, in the end of the section on triennial progress assessments, the person responsible for managing it is the superintendent, and I have committed to having conversations with each principal in my annual commentary, or their commentary to me, my commentary to them about how the year went. I'm committed to having this issue be on the agenda of every conversation. How did the wellness program go this year? What did you do to have fidelity to what's written here? And where can you improve? So that's the best we can do now. You know, there is that evaluation document that Suzanne put in initially, and we said that was an example. Right? So it's an example. Right? So that's my recommendation is that this document be approved as a complement to the existing CSBA generated text that was approved about 2 years ago. So we'll have two documents, one for show, that's the other one, and one for real use, that's this one.
Implementation.
Yeah, very exactly.
Great. No, I appreciate all the work that's gone into it. Lori, we missed you last time. I'm sure you would have added to the conversation, but we're thrilled that you're here today to see.
He's waiting, can we at least give her a chance?
Yeah. Wait, is there something you'd like to say about it?
Let's see. I just would like to say thanks for the opportunity. I felt, I'm glad that we had as much input as we had. I wouldn't have wanted to be one of 3 people writing a wellness policy just because it's my opinion on wellness. I mean, in Food for Thought, we try to bring in the experts to train the volunteer parents, and we really tell the parents it's a good idea to leave your baggage at the door and go with the recommendations of these healthcare professionals to teach the kids the lessons that we want to that we want to present to them. And I felt that was important in this process as well. I have my own concerns as a parent, but I felt it was really important to get the input from the experts in our community who work with our kids every day. So it was great to have Jim Hall and to have Judy Murphy and Sherry Beers. I mean, these are highly educated people in their fields, and it was great to get their input on it. So,
Fantastic. Thanks a lot. I know a lot of great work went into it, and I'm excited about having it. So, do we have a motion to approve?
Can I just
More
make
comments?
Sorry.
More comments.
I just want that, I know we talked about the water, and I just gonna throw out there, I hope we spend some of the bond money on getting water closer to eating areas during lunch. And then, I don't know why I didn't see this last time, I'm sure it was there, but recess monitors and teachers will encourage students to be active and will serve as role models by being physically active along with the students. And I have to tell you, at the elementary level, that makes, I know you're monitoring and making sure there's, not fights going on, so it's not like you can just go play basketball, but the kids love it when adults are out there either playing handball or basketball or, and
Boxing them.
not that. But I'm so glad that that's in there, because it does, I don't know that everyone realizes that you are serving as a role model, that you're just standing there and talking with another adult versus doing something else.
It's a really interesting point, just 10 seconds on it. There are certain places in here, and when Suzanne and Lori brought it to me, to be the respondent, receiving the draft, there were some statements in here about staff, role modeling. And I raised questions, and I said, it's not going to happen all the time, but I think it's good to have it in there, right? Isn't it? I mean, especially younger kids follow adult model. So, I can't promise you it's going to happen
Right,
at
on every recess.
Every recess, but I can tell you that
It's nice to see.
better to have it there than not.
Be encouraging.
Exactly.
And I personally want to say to Lori, with whom I served on Food for Thought for many years, we talked about this a little last time, but the coming together of Food for Thought in a productive, proactive way with the district, with Suzanne's willingness to do that, and you're working together is great. You didn't hear this last time I was referred to by Thane as the water boy because of my obsession with water. So I will. I
thought it was Aquaman.
Aquaman's way better.
I'm switching.
Keep down in the pipes checking stuff out for Hank.
Yeah.
So I do believe strongly that water, having been on Food for Thought about all those issues with nutrition, I think water is one area that's a fairly easy substitute. Tofu may not be, specialty foods may not be, fat-free foods, who knows, vegetarian only, but water is something that, every kid who's played a sport appreciates water. And so to the extent that I hark to what Jane said, to the extent, the other thing I was going to say is come to us and ask us for stuff. Now we have some Measure J money. If you have an opinion about how some of that should be spent, let that be known.
we will do that, and we will be meeting with the PTAs at the beginning of the year to kind of suss out what the schools are moving toward, what their cultures are looking at. It really, the project that we did at Nordhoff was really a great coming together of the PTA and Food for Thought and with support from Rotary to make that project happen there for that hydration station, and we look for more opportunities like that. As Food for Thought's learned over the years, the angry mob at the gate, like, you will have this because we want you to have it, is not always what the school wants. The school might say, we don't want that. We just want a water station or something. And so asking the schools, how can we help, and then looking for partners, looking for ways to partner to make that happen. It's important to have that.
So thanks to you both. Thanks for working together and coming up with this obviously well thought out.
Something for the parents. Yeah, really, something for the parents. We really wanted a tool that parents could say, what's the wellness policy? I can understand it without all of the, the CBS, School Board Association jargon and hieroglyphics next to it. I really wanted it to be accessible for parents.
Right. Thanks a lot. Other comments?
Yeah, I think this is really good. I noticed that there's a call for specific goals and objectives. I'm going to go right back to what I said last time. There's a lot of stuff here, but it would be really exciting for me to periodically know what it is that we've set as goals at our different schools and how we're doing.
Well, as I said, that'll be part of the mid-August conversations that I'll be having with each principal, and I can give you a report. I would say the September board meeting.
That'd be great.
How's that?
That'd be great. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, this is amazing, and I think I was on the very first wellness committee discussions long time ago. Gosh, it was a really long time ago. And the one thing I would like to see in the future would be something about vaccinations. I think that really ties into what
That's a really great point. It did come up, and you raised it. It's a moving target, and so what I think we should have something in here. Once we have a sense of, well, first of all, the Senate, as you know, State Senate's dealing with it right now. It looks like they're going down the path of saying if you don't want to vaccinate, then you have the option of either homeschooling or going to a private school, basically. But if you're coming to a public school, you're pretty much going to be vaccinated. Okay, I mean, that's a little strong, but isn't that pretty much where they're going? What'd you say? Yeah, I mean,
Me too.
That's where they're going. That's where they're going. I mean, there'll still be a way to sort of try to not do it, but it's going to be pretty complicated. And it's not religious preference anymore. That's the thing.
Great. Well then,
I'll make a motion to approve the wellness policy.
I'll second it.
all in favor? Aye. Great. Now moving on to the California School Board hieroglyphics and jargon. John Walker is here to help us with this. What we have done in the past and what is scheduled on the agenda is typically we have a first look at it at this meeting. If we have any comments about any of the items, questions, comments, we make our suggestions and then we're able to ratify or approve that at our next meeting.
Okay. If I could just comment to Jane's questions tonight. Your questions regarding the budget are well-founded. When I first ran for a school board a long time ago,
A couple of decades ago.
I ran on a platform that says, I'm going to run my school district, Ventura Unified, like a business. It took me about 6 months before I found out that all the cards weren't on the deck. You know, you had the Department of Education, you had the state legislature, you had the unions, you had all kinds of different things that made it impossible to do it the way I felt like it should. So I was a very frustrated guy for a while and asked many of the same questions. And so I understand why you went where you did. But that kind of has to do with what the lead in here. As you know, board policy is something that is your roadmap, it's your textbook, it's your guidebook that's going to keep you guys on the same track. It's going to protect you and keep you safe. And this, what we're going to just hopefully go through quickly tonight, we'll see. I don't know what to expect since this is my first time. I talked to Jim Brugge and he gave me a little idea.
He told you to watch out for me, probably.
No, he didn't.
He said watch out for Aquaman.
Yeah, Aquaman, that was very good. So I'm going to assume that you all have read it and that you have used the keys, OK, in walked, and new, and deleted, and so forth. So this first batch of policies really has to do with AB 1266. You all may remember that AB 1266 was passed last year, and that is the law that mandates that students can self-identify their gender. And then that permeates through the rest of all your board policy in terms of how the administration implements it, how the student is treated, how the way he has to maneuver through the system, as well as through the curriculum, which is through the instruction side. This has to do with athletics. We forget sometimes that athletics is part of the instruction. So those are the three policies that we're going to look at very briefly tonight. So I guess without going through them page by page, I'm just going to open it up for the very first one, Board Policy 0410. and just ask you, what do you see? Before we go too far, I indicated new after talking with Jim, if I felt that it was not even substantial, but if it was different than what your existing policy was, because I'm going to make you aware of it. In many cases, new was almost like your old policy, but there was enough things that I felt that you should, be brought, made aware of it.
I'm wondering if we could do a page by page, because I don't even have a comment till we get to page 5.
Jim did warn me about you. Go right ahead. Page by page.
No,
I do on page 2.
So if you have one on 2, let's hit that. Yeah.
It just says regarding the designation of a district coordinator for non-discrimination. Do we have?
We do. That would be Andy. So.
Right. That's it.
All right. Any others on 2? 3?
I got a broad question. Board policies in this context are the policies of the district?
Yeah, they're
synonymous.
Right, exactly.
There's no
we don't have any
parallel
other set.
district.
There's no other set.
Got it.
The only other set of things are the administrative regulations that explain how we would implement.
Okay.
But no other policy. Well, there are no other formal policies.
But administrative regulations is part of board policy.
They are. It's a separate document.
It's separate. It's more of, as Dr. Banks said, it's more of the implementation side.
Thanks.
I have a question on page 5 of 23 in the box.
You skipped way ahead. I don't know if that's
No, we're on 3, 4.
Okay, 3.
3, I'm sorry.
4, 5.
Do I hear 3? Do I hear 4?
4. Any on 4? Okay, 5.
The second box, it says, the ADA requires district to provide services and aids to ensure the disabled individual, and then in parentheses it says, however, if the district can show that providing such aids and services would fundamentally alter the nature of the function, program, or meeting, or would be an undue burden, then the district need not provide them. How do you define undue burden?
I put that in parentheses, just because I wanted you to see it.
Yeah.
It could be that maybe you don't have the money to implement it.
Well, we haven't for a really long time, for most of the things, but we do it anyway.
Yeah.
So
that is really a way out of a jam. That's really all it is.
So we can act, but do we have to go to court?
You would have to be able to substantially show that it's a hardship. You'd have to be able to
It's a pretty high bar.
Yeah.
I wouldn't spend the time
think we should go there?
I wouldn't spend the time to not do it.
Okay.
That may be bad English.
That's why I'm asking that question.
In a company context, undue burden is like it would bankrupt the company.
Yeah, basically.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Mike, sorry, was there more?
No, that's okay.
On the first paragraph, I just felt like sentences 1 and 2 kind of said different things.
First paragraph, first page?
First paragraph on page 5.
Oh.
Page 5. So the first sentence, the district's non-discrimination policy and related informational materials shall be published in a format that parents and guardians can understand. To me, that means every parent or guardian. It seemed to me that maybe we should just say, kind of jump to the second sentence and say, when 15% or more of the school students speak a single primary language other than English, the district's non-discrimination policy and related informational materials should be published in a format that parents, guardians can understand.
And Thane, that's why it was listed as new words, because the 15% is what was actually added when I looked at your old policy.
Yeah.
And the new recommendation is the 15%.
Right.
But I guess with things saying if someone needs German, then we'd have to, is that what you're saying?
Well, that's how I read the first sentence.
Yes, that is correct.
Or Chinese, or...
Is format language, though? Because there really is a difference between the format of a report and the language that it's written in. And the first sentence is saying that it has to be published in an understandable format.
Yeah.
The second sentence is saying that which languages it needs to be published in. Because I think my interpretation of that first sentence was don't print government gobbledygook.
That's correct.
Oh,
okay.
And it's-
I didn't read
and
it
it's
that
going
way.
to go home.
This government gobbledygook.
This government gobbledygook, you're right.
That's going to be in your student handbook that goes home. It's going to be in the student year-end document, or at the beginning of the school year.
I guess I wouldn't know how to determine that I had a format that everybody could understand. But I wouldn't argue about it.
You want to let a fifth grader write it.
All right, I mean, if that's how you read it, I won't dispute it. I just didn't read it that way.
I mean, can we wordsmith that? I mean, could we just say published in a manner that people can understand, or rather than I agree with Mike. I think the format's I think that's what they're trying to say, but the format is not a great way of saying it.
Well, you certainly can do that, but in my estimation, some people that wrote this paragraph did think about, how it's going to be implemented. It says the district's non-discrimination policy shall be published in a format that people can understand. That's pretty straightforward, in my opinion. But you guys are the boss.
No, I mean,
we can change it.
I'm willing to come around on that. When I read it, I took format to mean language, but obviously I was
Well, see, it says in addition, that took you to the language.
right, that's why, and then I just took me into a spin. So I'm fine to leave it if everybody else is.
I'm sure.
All right, anything else?
Now, my next comment's on page 16, so anybody with something sooner?
Page 12.
Okay, so we finished with board policy 0410.
Apparently.
Okay, here we go. All right, page 12.
Under number 1, provide to employees, volunteers, and parents, guardians, training and information regarding the districts. I don't have a problem with that. I'm just wondering, how are we going to?
Well, we sure do it. I think we do a really good job with employees. The parents and guardians, I don't know that I would call it training.
Information, yeah. So it should be.
Volunteers, I would have to do more research on that. I'm not, and as Thane, talking about what Thane was doing, whatever, and he would raise questions like, should we use shall or may, and I have to say that there are just tens, maybe hundreds, of specific examples in our policies where if you said, do we do that to 100% implementation level, I would say no. So there's no way I could say that every person involved.
Well, what I was thinking was,
So I guess-
provide information, I know we do, and training when necessary, but I'm fine with it as it is.
I'm just saying,
sure we're not.
if you can live with the fact that we're not perfect,
It's
okay.
Right.
That whole first paragraph, number 1, is optional. You do not have to put that in. But you have part of it in your board policy now, so.
Yeah, I mean, I really believe strongly, and I told you 20 minutes ago, I strongly believe that one of the most important things we can do is to ensure the safety of children and staff. And one way of doing it is to keep that in there and have it be a goal. We won't hit 100%, but there are very few things about which I have a feeling of zero tolerance, but that's one of them. You come in my office, as Kathy knows, and you're there because you did that, it's going to be a very unpleasant meeting.
And Dr. Banker, I agree with you 100%, because one of the things that often happens is that people who are volunteers are not trained in how they talk to children.
I know.
And they can be very abusive without realizing it.
Yes, they can.
And that's the whole ideal of AB 1266.
I agree.
And kids can be worse.
One thing we consider, I see this kind of stuff all over the place, various PTA events and stuff, but to offer one, large seminar per year in the cafeteria where everyone is invited, and then we say, look, we made it available, and we offered it to everybody in the district.
I agree, and there are schools that do that. We've done some of that, Janine Murphy's done some of that. The problem, of course, is if you have the seminar in October, and now it's January, you have a whole new set of volunteers. You can't keep up with that, that's the problem. You can hardly keep up with employees, because people will turn over. But, you can say, if you did that, at least you could say we made a good faith effort.
Well, you could say if you are a volunteer or thinking you may volunteer throughout the year, and if you're a parent, at least the lawyer says.
Do you know if they're going to volunteer in March?
I actually have Volunteer 2000 on my it's an app. It tells me when I'm going to volunteer in 2017.
You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I thought you weren't feeling well.
I'd like to be on the record that
you get a second win.
I'd like the record to reflect that the werewolf comment was in the context of a debilitating sickness.
I thought this would stimulate you.
Your color is better.
I'm feeling better.
I'm getting psyched about these policies.
Laughter is good medicine.
It is.
So
All right, let's keep going.
13.
All right, well, keep going.
13.
Anything on page 15?
I'm sorry, 13. Number 2, provide to students a handbook. We already have that?
Yes.
Yeah, I thought so.
Good job, Jane. These are all the things I used to do. I appreciate that.
And me too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, no, yeah. That is pretty tough on these there, I gotta tell you. She is.
Okay, good. 14, 15.
I highlighted something at the bottom. Let me see. Okay, it's in the new section on number 1. And shall inform the student that it may be impossible to accommodate the student's needs related to his or her status as a transgender or gender non-conforming student.
I'm sorry, number 1.
If the student refuses to pay permission, I'm sorry, page 15, number 1.
Refuse to give permission.
Yeah, let me explain that to you.
Yeah, would you?
Okay, that's a situation where a student has self-identified that he or she is transgender. And so he tells, or he goes and speaks with a staff member. The staff member says, I need to let your teacher know, or I need to let a principal know, or I need to let your coach know. The student has an opportunity to say, no, I don't want to do that. Because I'm nervous about doing that. And so it says right after that, it says that in that case, the district really cannot be held or does not believe that it should be fully liable because of the inability to pass that information along. And most of these discussions are supposed to take place with the student and his or her parents.
Yeah, but a lot of times they don't want to share it with the parents, perhaps. I don't know.
That is true. That is true.
I think, the one thing that Andy wrote about this going retroactively to a year ago when this all passed, that we felt that the best way to address this issue, and I realize it's different, John, you and I talked about Ventura, where you might have 5 to 10 times the number of potential students involved, and I think that, as is typical in a bigger district, there would be more formal infrastructure to deal with it. We felt, and that's a good thing, if you have formal infrastructure, but we felt the best way to deal with it was to bring the experts together to work with this child and family to help chart a course for how we can best accommodate what that student would want, whether it's athletics or lavatories or whatever it might be, okay? And that seemed right for us.
And that is the way it's supposed to be done.
Yeah, right.
Exactly like that. Ventura does the very same way. We have 2 students who have self-identified. One is graduating this year, and one will be a junior next year. And we brought the parents in. We decided to talk. I did not do it. Dr. Ariaga herself was involved in it, and talked to the student about how are you going to participate in certain kinds of sports? Where are you going to dress? Do you feel comfortable being dressed there, or do you not be? Fortunately, in Ventura's case, we put them in, we offered restroom facilities that were, what do they call it?
Unisex?
Well, yeah, that's another good word for it, but it's, unisex.
Which is smart. Anyway, that's no, I just want to tell you.
But you have to remember, the student may say no.
I know.
If the student says no, then you're going to make some accommodations.
Respond.
Yeah. So, but it's working. I've contacted several other districts. I contacted CSBA. Dr. Banger asked me to be a little prepared about this, and I did call CSBA, and I talked to one of the staff attorneys, and this system is working.
I'm pleased with it. That's good.
Anything else on 15? 16?
Yeah, I do have a question under number 2. After the determination of an improper purpose, is there any avenue to appeal?
Well, let's see. If the improper purpose, I believe my definition in doing a little homework is a guy who wants to go in the girls' locker room just because he wants to do that. That's an improper purpose. And that's when you get the parent involved. And usually that's when the student drops that denial or drops that request. The appeal.
Mike, I would say, I would just, thinking through this, staff member determines improper purpose, coordinator deals with it, determines its improper purpose. The student/parent/family may always appeal. Okay, so I'm not the coordinator, Andy is, so I would say the first appeal will come to me. At that appellate level, if I support it, you then become the appellate level. Any action by any staff member has the potential to get to the board. Anything. Okay, but it needs to, those are the levels I would see.
I'm just wondering if at least at one level you want to make it express, because this is a pretty definitive closing off of a gender question. And I know improper purposes is the one I always hear, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to wear a dress so I can go in the girls' locker room.
Well, when this first came out, that's what everybody was dreaming of.
I've been hearing that. So, but I mean, you know, the problem is always in the close calls, right? And so I'm just wondering if there was a way that we could actually put something
we
here.
Just simply, I could add a couple of sentences. The normal appellate processes in the school district will be available.
Sure.
Okay? I.e. Superintendent after the coordinator, board after the superintendent, something like that.
Some indication that there is a process.
Sure. Okay.
That would be great. Thank you.
I'll write that in. Process from the coordinator to the superintendent to the board.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then my comment is on number 4. I'm uncomfortable with just blanket permissions for students to go into any facilities they want to. I felt comfortable with the policy as it was explained by Andy in explaining the documentation that, and what Hank just said, we take the student in, we work with professionals, work out an accommodation plan, that sort of thing, rather than just leaving it wide open and deal with the, it seems like we cover the improper purpose problems in number 2 if we address 4 properly. And so I just suggested adopting some of the language I saw about the board policy, that when a student requests access to the facilities programs, the identification of such student and individual accommodation plan will be created through collaboration of mental health clinicians, site administration, other appropriate stakeholders. Any such accommodation plan will not be inconsistent with education code and state law. And then use the last sentence. However, the right to participate shall not render invalid or inapplicable other eligibility rules established for participation. But I want to accommodate anyone who has an issue, but I don't want to just say, all right, everybody go wherever you want to go, and then we have problems.
No, there is a process, and it's exactly the way you had stated it. They will self-identify, there will be a meeting with the parents, and if the parents support it, then, there's a real issue there.
It's not here, and I would like to put that here.
So formalize what I was describing that Andy wrote about,
right?
To sort of enhance, if you will, the language and explanation in number 4. Right?
So what we talked about under number 2, insert into number 4.
No, in number 4.
No, but I mean, isn't that what number 3 is?
What number 3 is? Number 4 or 2?
Well, number 4 explicitly states a student shall be entitled to access facilities and participate in programs and activities consistent with his or her gender identity. There's no restriction to that.
But number 3 says they've already gone through.
This is sequential. This is sequential.
Number 3 right above it?
Yeah, it's sequential.
Well, I don't think it's necessarily sequential. I mean, it is above it in the page, but I don't think it necessarily explains that these items are sequential.
No,
in
it
any
doesn't
way.
say that, but I mean, number 3 does talk about, access to facilities, sports and other things as part of that plan that you're talking about. So maybe number 4 can refer to number 3?
If the child doesn't want the unisex room, they want the girls' locker room.
Right.
And then you have girls who don't want to be in the locker room.
I want it to be part of a plan. I don't want it to be the student just wakes up one morning and decides they're going to do it.
Larry, why couldn't we just say 2, 3, and 4 are sequential?
Okay, we can do that.
Just would that, Mike, do you think, from your view, that would help?
I think if you say something in number 4 as pursuant to a plan, I mean, in compliance with a plan as developed under number 3 above.
Like that.
Right?
That's fine.
Because I agree with you. It's not just a
Like that.
ad hoc thing.
Right.
Okay. Now, there's one other issue that you may recall reading. You've got a student who is going to go into another a restroom facility shower that is a different biological sex, yeah. All these new words are hard for me to put in the proper context.
Well, Caitlyn Jenner just barely figured it out, and he's older than I am, so.
She's older.
But
She's older than I am. I'm sorry. She is.
What some of the policy is suggesting to us, making a recommendation, that in your student manual that goes out at the beginning of the year, you tell the parents that this is your policy, and students, if you're fearful that a boy may end up in a girl's restroom, tell us now. And they want you to do that so that in the event that something happens, then you can take action and it doesn't look like retribution against that student who is just self-identified. Because if you wait until the incident happens, then it looks like you're doing it in reaction.
And that was recommended.
Yeah, it's one of the recommended policies.
Yeah,
Yes.
not required. I want to think about that one a little bit.
How old, the student at Ventura High, the junior, how old was he when he was self-identified?
I believe it was in 9th grade.
So both kids were young, I mean, young, still in high school.
The other one was a boy who graduated last year. But the one at Ventura High School is using the unisex and
Everything's working.
I'll tell you, the kids handle it much easier
Than we do.
than the grandparents.
We have adults.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Which is not just my school.
Okay, we're moving on to 17, 18, 19, 20.
This whole thing is, the whole athletic competition is much more long-standing, I guess. I mean, there's nothing here that's unique. I don't think.
Some of you may know, I sit on the CIF board of directors. They call it the Federated Council. And they passed a policy last year that mirrors this almost exactly in terms of allowing boys to play in girls' sports, vice versa, that sort of thing. So that is all written through here. In fact, it's mentioned several places.
21, 22, 23.
22, drawn to the comment about the district may or may not wish to seek a waiver of liability for accidents or injuries resulting from participation in athletic activities.
Where's that?
It's in the second square, second paragraph of the same.
Yes, yes, yes.
So do we have that? Do we do that?
I don't know.
Yes,
It's
second
right there.
square. These are.
I like mine have.
Yeah.
Okay, there you go, it's a better answer than I get.
And these are policies that you have right now.
Yeah.
That's exactly.
Well, this policy, in particular, the reason I bring it up is that the district may or may not. So I was just not clear if we were or were not.
We do. Guess we did.
Okay, so I think that wraps it up.
Okay.
Thank you, John.
Thanks a lot.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hang it in there.
So we'll see this on one of our upcoming agenda.
Yes, June 30th.
That's when I'll have all my questions.
Great.
Well, you'll be feeling better about that.
All right.
Getting those two, Andy, so the, okay.
Citizens Oversight Committee update. I thought we had an excellent meeting. Any comments?
I was disappointed there weren't more women.
Yeah, well, 2 out of 9. Yeah. We
Well,
talked,
actually, we had only 3 out of 16 were
yeah, we
women,
didn't have a lot of applicants.
I think.
Yeah,
three or four.
I remember
Yeah.
that, but I'm just disappointed that there weren't more.
Right.
I actually was really impressed.
Yeah.
I was really pleased to see them take ownership of the body and the process, and it's going to be interesting.
Yeah.
I don't want to.
And the two that are
Yeah, I don't want to comment on my own. Although obviously, in all candor, it had more to do, and Jane said it very well in her emails to everybody at the end of the process. We had an abundance of opportunities to pick great people. I mean, there were some great people that aren't on the group, and frankly, almost to some degree, almost randomly, sometimes we left people off hoping that in 2 years they'll consider being on it, because obviously these folks are not going to serve indefinitely. So yeah, and I was also really happy. I thought that the tenor of it, and I think Jeff Palmer seems like he's very comfortable being the leader of an organization like that, and just kind of started quickly working.
Yeah, I was impressed with everybody.
I was very pleased as well that it just took off, and very impressed by the whole group. Yeah, so thank you. All right, superintendent's report.
Well, as you know, I always fashion my superintendent's report depending on the time that we get to me. Therefore, this will be probably among my shortest. The only thing I want to say is that in the next couple of weeks, you'll be receiving a report from me culminating in some more formal report on June 30th about the process, sort of a segue from the Citizens Oversight Committee, the process that, now that Andy's here, Andy and Josh in particular will lead to help us identify the most outstanding candidates for our construction manager position and ultimately our architect position. One of the things that came out of a conversation among the three of us is that it is not unusual to have the construction manager chosen first and then have that person participate in the conversation about the best potential candidates for architects, because they work with them all the time. So that may be the plan that we use. The number of people we interview, I've talked, sort of in that lower range of 2, but clearly I think 3 might well be better. We'll just have to see. Once we construct the RFP and we get responses, we'll see how many people seem to be outstanding enough to interview. So that process is now at Andy's office, working with Josh, and I'll be sending you a report on it.
So we still have that issue of, I don't know that we know for sure that we need an architect.
Oh, we do.
I mean, if you're fixing roofs and plumbing and sidewalks, you've got a project manager, what do you need to do?
Because you need someone to show you what it potentially, well, maybe not roofs so much, but when you're improving a whole variety of facilities, you need someone with the expertise to show you what potentially it could look like. Okay? And I think what I would say is reserve your judgment, everybody, reserve your judgment on the kind of expertise that we need until after you see the kind of RFP we construct, the construction manager.
RFP being?
Request for proposals. Okay, so we'll be putting together And if Josh has done this, this has been his life on and off for 20 years. So I will be contacting attorneys to be sure we have all of our ducks in order about what we're asking for, so it's appropriate for what we're asking for. In responses initially from construction management firms, you'll see the kind of services that they provide, the kind of services that the district personnel can provide, which in our case is very minimal, because we have a person who's in charge of maintenance, operations, and transportation. We don't have a whole phalanx. So I'm going to be very protective, and Andy's going to be very protective of Josh. That has nothing to do with the architects. That's not what he does. Okay? But in terms of managing the projects, I've been in some districts where a person on staff could be let for at least half-time to do that. Well, we don't have that person. So, we'll be looking at construction management first, identify that person. Probably secondarily, we'll be talking about architects, and when we get to that point, then I will be happy to share with you why I think an architect is the second person needed when you're implementing a bond issue of any magnitude, and certainly are. So I can answer that question better later.
Items for future agendas.
Well, just
one thing, and just the relationship to COC was, we talked about having a COC member in our committee ultimately, right, to interview, right? So a board member or two, Andy, Josh, myself, and a COC member.
So just to clarify, the RFP, you referenced the lawyer, so I assume it is a legal requirement that we do all this through RFPs.
I believe so.
And, as I am aware, and I know we all are, one of the charges of our oversight committee is to review our efforts as a district to reduce our professional fees in the use of these monies. So I think that has to be a prominent consideration as we go forward. I know, Hank, that the law and the text of these measures don't allow you to use, it's kind of crazy, because you'd actually probably do so much better if you could use some Measure J money to hire your own internal person to oversee the construction, but you can't. So you can't use any of the money for any staff.
You can't pay, well, what you can do is as I understand it, we'll find out a little later, you are not permitted to pay present staff members from those bond monies.
Could you potentially hire a staff member?
I believe you could, yes. In fact, some districts have. Yeah.
And that's something that seems intriguing to me, at least as we're at the threshold of this.
A lawyer / construction manager.
We'll get it right.
Yeah.
I promise you that. There are lots of districts that have preceded us in this, and we will learn from them.
Items for future agendas. All right, on to the consent calendar.
I have a question. Item 8.4.5. I thought we hadn't decided yet whether we're replacing those buses, so how can we already put them on disposal?
Oh, we're selling them because we can't use them anymore.
But we haven't looked at the budget to decide if we can afford new ones. I thought, wasn't that on one of the budget for future consideration on the
True enough, yeah, true enough. An option is not to keep using these. Okay, the options are numerous as to how to get something better than 20-year-old equipment, leasing, buying. But we can't use these anymore. They're not able to be used anymore. I mean, that's the judgment we made. Right? They're not able to be used anymore. Now, we don't have to sell them now. We can sell them later. But we can't use them anymore, so that's why they're here. They're not safe. They're not safe. They're not usable.
I had a follow-on question to that, which strikes me as a pretty low value for a bus as being under $2,500. How are we gonna? Remember last time I asked you about this?
I'll give you some idea about what this is.
Oh, this is over 20.
I thought it said under.
Over.
Disposal over.
But even they're over now.
In the agenda here, it says under.
Oh, that's
it says under.
Oh, sorry, I'm not looking at the agenda, I'm looking at the actual page.
It's two different things. It says two different things. On the actual page itself, it says over.
Yeah, it's over. It's over.
So this is over.
The page is right. The page is correct.
Okay.
That's wrong. Thank you for identifying that. Anyway, I would be pleased to give you if
I was just asking.
No, it's a good question. I mean, I know a little bit about this, and what I know about it is, it's here because we can't use it anymore. But, you know, I think we should move ahead, but if you feel uncomfortable, I can get your email from Josh and put it on June 30th.
My question was, how are we going to do it?
I don't know. I mean,
before I approve it, I'd like to know how.
There you go. That would be why I would give you a report. There is a pretty standard process where you dispose of surplus property. But I have to tell you, I've never done it. I know it exists, but I can't tell you today, so I'd be happy to get something.
Are there other?
So I would say, why don't we defer 8.4 months?
Are there other questions, comments? So we defer 8.4.5 to the next meeting. Is there a motion to approve the other consent calendar?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We will adjourn to closed session. Thank you all for being here.